League Trophy Parade in May. Police responded to several stabbings and assaults, including on a police officer in North London. Researchers are warning doctors aren't identifying younger women at a higher risk of breast cancer. A team at Cambridge University says the current criteria for screening is focusing too much on inherited genes rather than lifestyle factors. Their figures reveal NHS checks miss 95% of women under the age of 50 who are more vulnerable. Dr. Juliette Usher-Smith led the study and has told LBC how the tool they used assessed risks.
It's a model that includes family history, but it also includes reproductive risk factors, say whether women have had children and what age they had those children, but also their exposure to hormones over time, so HRT or contraceptive use, but also their lifestyle. So we know that weight makes a difference, alcohol, physical activity.
Health advice body NICE says current evidence doesn't warrant a change to its guidelines. And Kemi Badenoch says she won't criticise the Prime Minister for taking a holiday 2 weeks after moving into number 10. The Tory leader says everybody should be taking a break, but she says he should have faced MPs after taking office. Andy Burnham says he'll be in contact with officials and continue to hold meetings while on holiday. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 21 points at 10,879. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather, scattered showers in the north and west tonight, drier and partly cloudy in the south and east, a low of 12. Tomorrow there'll be heavy thundery rain in the north, cloudier with patchy drizzle for Wales and the Midlands, but sunnier in the south, highs of 26 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Amelia Cox.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Simon Marks.
Good evening, everybody. I am in for Ian Dale once again tonight and for the rest of this week and next week here on LBC. It's a pleasure to be with you, whether you are listening to us on the radio or your mobile or watching us in glorious Technicolor on the LBC official YouTube channel or Global Player or the LBC app. Tonight, we want to hear from you on a wide range of issues. Over the next 3 hours, we're going to talk about prisons, the nation's food supply and redemption. Coming up at 9, we'll talk about whether people really can change and whether you've got experiences in your own life of successfully persuading people that you are a different person now than you used to be. After the news at 8, what are we going to do if food supplies start running short? We've got LBC exclusive reporting tonight suggesting that there is a real risk of that thanks to both the drought in large parts of England and the whole of Wales and, of course, the ongoing closure of the Strait of Hormuz. What can we do to improve the resilience of the country's food supply? But this hour, early prison releases. The government had, I think it is fair to say, an invidious decision to make, as Justice Secretary Alex Norris told Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
Upon becoming Prime Minister, in my case, become Justice Secretary, we looked at this, we put a pause in place on it. We didn't want that to last very long because we know that that has an impact on victims' well-being too. We've come back in short order and we've been able to remove child sex offenders, as I say, rapists, as I say. We have made movement, and I think that that's the right thing to do.
But, as you will know by now, that list of people who will not be eligible for early release does not include the murderers of PC Andrew Harper. 2 of his 3 killers could still be out as early as October, to the agony of his widow Lizzie, who has called the prospective release deplorable. The government today, in the form of Alex Norris, apologised to the Harper family. Here is more of the Justice Secretary's interview with Nick Ferrari this morning.
We wanted to go further, of course we did, but we can't do that and have a functioning prison system, and that's why we've had to make the decision. And Nick, if you put to me that shouldn't have to be something that's felt by victims and their families, I would agree with that, but it's the circumstances that we're in order to make sure, that we are able to have a functioning prison system that we know that everybody needs in this country.
I will throw everything I can at this through a proper legal challenge to protect Andrew Harper's legacy.
That is Eileen O'Connor, chairwoman of Thames Valley Police, telling LBC today that she is disgusted by the government's announcement.
Rapists, child sexual offenders should not be released early from their sentences. But you cannot say in the next breath that killers, people who kill people, can be subject to that release. It's perverse to say that, and it does not make sense.
And that takes us to the question that we want to ask you this hour, because as she indicated there, this is all about where we draw the line. The maths is clear. We just don't have enough space in our jails. And while the government is vowing to create 14,000 new places by the year 2031, the fastest prison building programme since the Victorian era, the Prime Minister said today, it doesn't help us now as he deals with a fateful situation. So where would you draw the line? If Andrew Harper's killers are to stay in jail, who would you release instead? Maybe drug offenders, female prisoners? It turns out many of them are inside for violent or sexual offences. Foreign nationals, perhaps. 10,000 of them are inside our jails tonight. But the flip side of that coin is that there are more than 1,800 Brits jailed overseas. I would suggest to you that Mr. Burnham has been placed in an impossible position on this issue. There really is no winning, is there? Whatever he did, someone would have an entirely justifiable beef with it. But the idea that tonight the Harper family has been so aggrieved by today's decision might represent the first major own goal that the Burnham government has scored. Are the families of violent crime getting left behind in this process? And where would you draw that line in determining who gets early release from jail and who does not? Let me know what you think. 0345 6060 973 is the number to telephone, or you can call us on that number on WhatsApp. You can text us at 84850. And to kick off our conversation this evening, I'm joined by Andrea Coomer, KC, Chief Executive of the Howard League for Penal Reform, which of course is named after a very famous prison reformer in the United Kingdom, John Howard, many, many years ago. Andrea Coomer, thank you very much indeed for being with us on the programme tonight. I mean, this was a completely invidious position in which the Prime Minister found himself. I mean, there is obviously public outcry, particularly over the fact that PC Harper's, two of his three killers, are going to be eligible for early release as early as October. But in many ways, there was no winning this, was there, for the Prime Minister? Good evening.
No, good evening, Simon. No, he's in a terribly tight spot, and there's not very much room to manoeuvre because the prisons are basically all full. We have a Crown Court backlog of more than 85,000 cases of people who will be potentially coming into prison. And the Sentencing Act and these changes that were to come in on the 2nd of September and now be in October were Keir Starmer's government's response to that. And he's now inherited the Starmer government's response and the backlash that has gone with it. And I think there has undoubtedly been really poor treatment of victims of crime who have received, 6 weeks ago, a letter in very vague terms telling them that some people might not be released early, and we'll let you know later whether your perpetrators will be. So I think he's come in at a tricky time, but he has to do something. As you've said, if you don't release these people, you're going to have to release somebody else because the prisons are all full.
So what is the something that you think he should have done?
Well, I think there are lots of things he can do. I mean, if the concern is about people who've committed violent offences or offences that have resulted in death, then there are a lot of people in prison. There are 23,000 people in prison for non-violent offences, for theft or for fraud or for drugs offences. So they're men and women. Disproportionately, they are women. So women tend to have committed non-violent offences rather than violent offences. So that's one group of people who you could potentially release. I mean, I think arguably the most sort of obvious are people who've been recalled to jail without any further offending, and that is an increasing growing problem. We have a probation service that is just as full as the prisons are full, and probation officers find themselves recalling somebody to custody when they're unsure of them, or because nobody in prison ever commits a serious further offence in a way that there's that uncertainty in the prison system, probation system. But, that requires a functioning probation service, and our probation service is really overstretched.
And with that in mind, sorry to cut you off, but with that in mind, the government argued today that these early release prisoners are all going to be wearing electronic tags, big increase in the use of those electronic tags. But the probation inspector said today that the system of monitoring those tags is clunky and needs a huge increase in staff if those prisoners are going to be monitored successfully. And if they're not monitored successfully, there's every possibility that some of them are going to re-offend and find themselves back in jail. So this becomes just this kind of vicious circle.
There's a real danger of it becoming a cycle. And I think politicians of all colours like the idea of technology being some saviour, because a tag costs £4,900. But a tag by itself isn't actually supervision. That's just surveillance. You need a person who responds if somebody breaches, who provides support and care. That's what people need when they come out of prison, is help getting their lives back on track. And if the answer is just put a tag on them and leave them to their own devices, then that's neither supervision nor support. So there does need to be significant investment in the probation service, there's no question.
The Prime Minister said today that to avoid a repeat of this situation, he's asked the Justice Secretary to identify other ways to free up prison capacity. But he's also promising to create 14,000 new places in prison by 2031 through that rapid prison construction programme. Is it really realistic to think he can meet that target?
No, he's not. Look, we have a prison system of, 86,000 people yesterday, and we're struggling to keep all of those prisons staffed. In very many of those prisons, people are locked up for 22, 23 hours a day, no health interventions, no mental health support, no therapeutic interventions, no education, no work, are just locked up in their cells because there aren't the staff to unlock them. So you've got a prison like Bullingdon in Oxfordshire that is struggling to find enough staff to run any kind of meaningful regime, and yet the government plans to build a new prison directly opposite there with what staff? The good people of Oxfordshire don't seem to want to join the prison service. So, there are, I think, real problems with this prison building programme. What really needs to happen is they need to address the demand for prison places and invest in the community in housing, drug support, alcohol support, mental health services that stop people committing crime in the first place and stop them reverting to crime. And that is much cheaper than putting people in prison and investing in this endless circus of prison building that the government's committed to.
When the Prime Minister says that he has pushed to the very limits of what is possible to do you believe him? Is he right?
Look, these, as you've already said, Simon, these are invidious choices that he is facing. So he's having to draw lines with certain kinds of offences and not other kinds of offences. And obviously there are some awful individual cases that have come to the fore where you can completely understand why victims are really upset by the decision. But individual cases don't necessarily make good law. You need to have proper risk assessment of who actually poses a risk to the public. And the Prime Minister's obviously been advised that people who have committed manslaughter, which is an offence that doesn't require high levels of intention to hurt somebody, are safer to release than certain other people, like people who've committed rape, for example.
But in the specific case of these two men who killed PC Andrew Harper and who were convicted of manslaughter, sentenced to 13 years in jail, after all of that, a law was passed in Andrew Harper's name that had they come to trial after the law would have been passed and been convicted, they would have faced mandatory life sentences. Is there nothing that the government at this point can do in that particular case to get the Attorney General to look at the way in which they were sentenced, to request any kind of...
In that case, there's already been unduly lenient sentencing hearing, which did increase the sentences, and there was a review of I think there was an appeal to see whether it should have been murder rather than manslaughter, and those things are settled. In that individual case, there's nothing that can be done. What can be done is for the Prime Minister to just articulate who else he would be releasing if he was to keep them in prison.
And so with that in mind, can I ask you finally to respond to a text that we've had from one of our listeners that's just come in from Andrew, who says, perhaps we could look at this issue another way. Why do we keep jailing people who are no risk to society? Yesterday, a grieving man was jailed for over 2 years for not burying his mother and keeping her in a chest freezer. All a tragedy, but is he a real risk to society? Andrew says so many people are jailed when they pose no risk, and we then release early those people that do present a risk. Why? How would you answer Andrew's question?
Completely agree with Andrew. I spend a lot of time in prisons looking at conditions, talking to prisoners, and frequently come across people and I think, what is the point in you being here? Something that, prisons are full of people deep in regret and remorse who really feel every day for what they did, whether that was a violent offence or not a violent offence. And we hold them in prisons for very, very long sentences in many cases, long beyond the time that they pose any kind of danger to anybody. And then there are lots of people in prison for sort of stupid things like that. I mean, there are times that I come across women who've been imprisoned for protesting, for example. It used to be Just Stop Oil. More recently, it's the Palestine Action Women. And you think, well, what is the point of this? Why would these people, why should we be paying £59,000 a head for a prison place for somebody like this? I mean, prisons should be for people who are dangerous while they are dangerous. We shouldn't be locking up people just because we're mad at them. We need to have a much more serious conversation with the public around what prisons can and can't provide, because if you want people to reoffend, the best thing you can do is to put them into prison. If you want them to turn their lives around, then support them in the community, keep them in work, keep them in contact with their family, give them housing. That's how you actually cut crime and stop further victims of crime.
Andrea Coomber, I'm very grateful to you for kicking us off with this conversation this evening. Andrea Coomber, KC, Chief Executive of the Howard League for Penal Reform. And it is, I think, important to remember that over 14 years of Conservative government, the crisis that we're now dealing with intensified, and that was caused partly by the fact that an insufficient number of new prison places were built and created, and also partly by the fact that society was demanding that longer sentences be imposed on more and more people. And as a result, today, the Prime Minister finds himself facing these invidious choices. But many of you, I know, argue that the victims have been overlooked, particularly in the case of the family of PC Andrew Harper. Let me know what you think. You can call me at 0345 6060 973. You can text 84850. The time is now 19 minutes past 7.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m.
Andy Burnham under fire today over the government's decision to let killers out of prison early. But did they have any alternative? The Prime Minister, for what it's worth, isn't here to face the backlash. He's gone on holiday after just 2 weeks in the job. His opponents say he's bunking off work already. But don't our leaders deserve a break just as much as the rest of us?
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Big Motoring World is the nation's biggest used car supermarket, so we go big on things like peace of mind. That's why we're proud to announce we're an RAC approved dealer, and all our cars come with a free 3-month warranty and RAC breakdown cover. Drive away with peace of mind at Visit bigmotoringworld.co.uk to verify comparison and for T's and C's. Nation's biggest refers to cars in stock.
Hi, Mum. Cornwall is absolutely stunning. We love it here. Of course, our Lee thought he was too tough for sun cream and got sunburnt immediately.
Have you put on your sun cream?
He never learns. On the bright side, children's bus travel is free. So we've been riding him around everywhere to keep this lobster out of the sun. And we found this brilliant beach where we even saw a seal. Miss you tons. Love, Sally.
Enjoy great British summer savings, such as free bus travel for children this August. Funded by the UK Government.
Simon Marks on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Which is what Jeff has done, and he is in Bishop Stortford this evening. Evening to you, Jeff.
Evening, Simon. I used to be a policeman many, many years ago, so this is quite a subject close to my heart. Now, if we just take a step back and put the emotions to one side, because there's lots and lots of them, under the Sentencing Council organisation of a letter from the Crown Court or article November 2018, you have to consider the determining offence of the category, the culpability. And it says, the very high culpability is either a character of a person or a combination of culpability factors. And in the culpability factors, it's got notes at the bottom, which it says there, and I will quote, "The offence was committed against an emergency worker acting in the exercise of his functions as such a worker." And it says in the sentencing guidelines, it must be a whole life sentence. And that's for manslaughter, not murder. This is the sentencing notes for manslaughter. Murder is a whole life sentence. There's absolutely no question of it. My question would be, why didn't they all get whole life sentencing orders as dictated by law? And then the manslaughter comes under common law. So why did they not get full life sentences to start with? The Prime Minister and the Home Secretary at the time and now could order a review on their own without necessarily going to court and say, we feel this has been incorrectly administered and these people, they should certainly not be released. No question on that.
And Jeff, you're not reading the new law named after PC Andrew Harper. You're looking at the previous statute that existed.
Yeah, 2018 and before. So any offences committed after, I think it says June 2015, come under the requirements, under the sentencing notes, culpability. Starting point is 11 to 24 years with a minimum of 18 years in custody. That's the starting point. If it's an emergency worker who has been subject to manslaughter, remember, manslaughter is a lesser sentence.
Yes, as these two men were convicted of manslaughter.
Exactly. They should be subject to a whole life prison sentence.
Okay, well,
it says it in sentencing instructions.
So Jeff, I'm not familiar enough with what actually occurred at that trial to be able to answer your question. But my question for you now is: we are where we are. The government's made its determination. These two men will begin to have the opportunity to be released starting in October, although it may be at least 10 months before their turn for release comes around. What do you think the government should be doing in practical terms now about the prison overcrowding problem, and where would you draw the line? Even if you're unable legally to resentence them or to incarcerate them for a mandatory life term, they've got that 13-year sentence. Where would you draw the line in terms of early prison releases differently from the way in which the government did today?
Any offences against the person, GBH, intent to cause serious bodily harm, or any such sentences that in the old days would be subject to what's called an arrestable offence, in other words, a minimum of 5-year prison sentence, should be exempt from the release. They should not be released. They should serve a term of a sentence according to the sentence they were given at the time.
Okay, but Jeff, let me ask you this, because Andy Burnham and Alex Norris, the Justice Secretary today, suggested that they had decided that rapists and violent sexual offenders, including people that had participated in grooming gangs, were the first people that they wanted to keep inside, and those people that you've just listed, and this is why this gets so very difficult and uncomfortable and awful, of course, for the victims of all of these different crimes, is that somewhere you've got to draw the line. So the government has said rapists and violent sexual offenders first stay inside, not the people that you've suggested. Where are you putting the pecking order here?
Okay. It should be any offence committed against the person, with injury or otherwise, should stay in prison, serve their sentence. The people they can be letting out are the person who doesn't have a television licence, the person whose car didn't have insurance twice when they were driving it and they didn't cause any offence to any other people, the person who committed tax fraud, the person who unwittingly set fire to their house or something like that.
Exactly.
Those types of offences, they don't need to be in prison.
Well, absolutely.
The fact that they've committed the offence, and they've suffered on their own accord by a punitive offence, it's sufficient retribution for them to say, you're an absolute total idiot. Why did you do that? Now look in the game.
And it may well...
I'd like to add my thoughts to this. If the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary and the Justice Minister think they can get away with this, they've got another thing coming. I will back up and I will make verbal protests and physical protests about this. This cannot be allowed to go ahead. They've got to stop these people coming out of prison. They've murdered or called manslaughter of a serving police officer carrying out his duty. That has got to be one of the most heinous crimes against the social state that we have. We have to have law and order. If people who murder or cause manslaughter of a police officer carrying out his duty are allowed to walk free, then we are into major social problems. Big social problems.
Jeff, I can hear the fury in your voice. Jeff in Bishop Stortford, a former police officer, expressing absolute fury there with the government's decision today. And I know many of our other listeners feel angry as well. And we'll hear from as many of you as possible between now and the top of the hour. But I also want to look in a slightly different direction here, which is taking a look at this pledge of 14,000 new prison places that Andy Burnham says he's going to put into place by 2031, the fastest prison building programme since the Victorian era, he says. Joining me now is Cassia Rowland, Associate Director for the Institute for Government think tank, which focuses on the criminal justice system and how it is performing. Cassia Rowland, thanks very much indeed for being with us on LBC this evening. I mean, how hard is it going to be for the government to meet that target of 14,000 new prison places by 2031? Good evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me. I think it is going to be pretty challenging. So this is a programme of prison expansion that has already been running for about 6 years. It's well behind schedule at the moment, and I don't think it's going to be easy for the current government to kind of stick to those plans. They have made real progress already. So we've had a new prison open since the last election, and they are making progress on other aspects of the kind of prison expansion program. There's different things they're doing, building new wings, bringing cells that are kind of falling apart back into use, things like that. But it is going to be difficult for them to deliver on, I think.
So when the Prime Minister says, as he did on social media today, that the government I lead will work to fix the prison crisis once and for all, I will not leave the same problems for my successors, it's far from evident that by 2031, he's necessarily going to be in a position to say that he's met those ambitions.
I think we will be in a much better place then than we are now, and certainly than we were in 2024. Partly that is because of these changes to sentencing, as well as the expansion to prison capacity. Really, you've got to do both, because based on kind of the trajectory of growth in the prison population, you couldn't just build more prisons. We kind of simply couldn't build them fast enough to keep up with demand.
But I wonder if you can build them fast enough even to keep up with recidivism, because I was looking at numbers today suggesting that reoffending has now hit a record high of 31.9% since 2024. So almost a third of prisoners who are released, and it's not just early release, it's also prisoners that have completed their sentences, end up back inside, and that's within a 2-year period since 2024. So the rate at which you've got to create new places has to be taking place at the same time as the doors of the existing prisons are welcoming back offenders that have previously been released.
It is a huge problem, and some of the other changes that the government's brought in are trying to target that. So one of the things we know is that short prison sentences tend to be really counterproductive, and particularly people who are just coming in and out of prison, bouncing around all of the time. It becomes really hard for them to kind of get their lives back on track and become kind of contributing members of society and also, improve their own lives. So one of the changes that they've made is to essentially get rid of short prison sentences that are going to be under a year, except in kind of exceptional circumstances where it's needed to protect a victim or things like that. And that is intended to allow for more effective rehabilitative work to happen in the community under probation. That's going to be hard to do as well. The probation service has got a lot of problems as well, but I think it is a step in the right direction to try and reduce that kind of constant cycle of people coming in and out of prison.
Cassia Rowland, I'm enormously grateful to you for joining us on the programme tonight. Thank you so much. That's Cassia Rowland, Associate Director at the Institute for Government think tank, which focuses on the criminal justice system and how it is performing. So now it's more of your calls to come on this topic. Andy Burnham said today that one of the issues that he's looking at is asking officials to consider faster returns of foreign national offenders to their country of origin. He's also asked for the early release of more women prisoners to be considered, although, as I said at the beginning of the programme, Alex Norris told Nick Ferrari this morning that a significant number of women inmates have also been convicted of violent and sexual offences. Let me know how you think the government should be handling this, and let me know whether you think victims' families are getting forgotten in all of these decisions. You can call me at 0345 6060 973, text 84850. It's 28 minutes to 8, and the news headlines come from Amelia Cox.
The Justice Secretary says victims' families are carrying the can for the failures of previous governments to build enough prison places. Ministers have apologised to the family of PC Andrew Harper as two of his killers still remain eligible for early release. No one is believed to have died after more than 150 people were pulled from the English Channel earlier. The engine on the dinghy they were in caught fire this morning. And there are calls for the criteria for women under the age of 50 to be screened for breast cancer to be widened. A study's found GP checks are focusing too much on genetics and not enough on people's lifestyles. LBC weather, scattered showers in the north and west tonight, drier and partly cloudy in the south and east, a low of 12 degrees.
LBC.
You know that feeling when you're out, something cool happens and you just have to capture it. The new Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 gets it. Thanks to its new wide design, content looks and feels so much better. Unfold it for a massive cinematic screen. Close it for perfect reels on the go. No cropping, no missing bits. Just content exactly as it was meant to be seen. Pre-order the new Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 8 on EE for only £54 per month, increasing to £56.50 March 2027 and £59 March 2028. Airtime plan and 48-month device credit agreement required. Subject to status, 18+, credit provided by EE Limited.
I heard you. A red light becomes a moment to breathe. A coffee run, a kick of momentum. A wrong turn turns into an adventure, while a song becomes your soundtrack. From the driver's seat of an LBX, even the most ordinary of days can feel that little bit extra. The award-winning Lexus LBX self-charging hybrid. Find the extraordinary in the everyday.
All right, can I get 1 ranch sauce, 2 Korean barbecue, and hang on, wait there, the McDonald's sweet curry is gorgeous. Okay, 1 ranch, 1 hot honey, 1 sweet curry. Final order. Oh, and some chicken selects. But really, I'm here for the sauce, aren't I? Served from 11 a.m. Dips sold separately. New dips available until the 24th of August. Choice of 2 dips with 5 chicken selects. Subject to availability.
Simon Marks on LBC. Text 84850.
Which is what Dave in Merseyside has done. He says, Simon, in the late 1980s, when I was serving in the military, there was a shortage of space in the London prisons. The government converted military barrack blocks into dormitories in a very short period of time to house low-risk civilian prisoners. They put fences, razor wire and watchtowers around the barrack block complex. The prisoners had an education centre, gym facilities. 6 military policemen were seconded to run each block with a civilian governor overseeing the whole camp. I was seconded to the camp for several weeks. We had good rapport with the prisoners and it worked really well. That's Dave in Merseyside, and I'm really interested you sent that text tonight, Dave, because I was thinking about that only this morning and wondering whether anybody might think it was an idea worthy of repeat. Let's go back to the phone lines. George is a first-time caller to LBC from Derby. Good evening, George. Thanks very much for calling LBC. What made you pick up the phone?
Hi, I've got so much to say. I mean, the last male caller you had, I agree with a lot of what he says, but I also disagree with the part about killing a police officer. I mean, when PC Andrew, I can't remember his surname, was killed. I mean, Harper, yeah. I mean, he probably was a bit of an idiot for putting his foot out and getting caught. I mean, those people in a motor vehicle, he knew that there's some stuff straggling behind.
Well,
He's probably wanting to be a hero and chase it,
George, I don't know that we can possibly talk about PC Andrew Harper in those terms.
Well,
he
I
was
think we need to not
killed
be
in the
lefty,
line of
wokey
duty
people.
by men that were convicted of his manslaughter. So the
If somebody dies as a result of somebody's behaviour, of course they're going to be convicted of manslaughter. It's a no-brainer, isn't it? But the fact is, though, it doesn't mean that the officer didn't do anything wrong himself. Okay, so we've got to be really clear on that. I mean, I have a legal background, and we've got to be crystal clear on that. Just because an officer lost his life, which is awful, it doesn't mean to say that the officer had no wrongdoing whatsoever in the way in which he approached the person. And I don't think that the force policy was followed in relation to that, of Thames Valley Police. So I think there's that to factor in too. I'd also like to point out very quickly, because I know we're pushed for time, we've also got to look at people like Alex Belfield, who have been recalled to prison for basically hurty words. And he was convicted and got 5.5 years in prison for hurty words and for, making YouTube videos about a certain number of people at the BBC, where, I don't think that 5.5 years in prison for Alex Belfield is appropriate nor reasonable. When you take into account somebody who views pornographic images of children and things similar are not sent to prison at all. It just seems like we have a two-tier, if you want to be, somebody who offends against children sexually, you don't go to prison. It's like the system encourages that. Whereas if you send hurty words on via an email or
George,
or
really,
YouTube,
I think if you want to talk about a two-tier prison system, the opportunity to do that is to focus on where you think the line should be drawn in terms of where early releases are going to be made, which inmates are eligible for early releases, and the government has clearly tried to navigate that line carefully today and found itself in a completely invidious position. I don't want to get into individual cases like the one that you mentioned. We do not know how Alex Belfield, who was jailed for 5.5 years after being found guilty of stalking charges against various broadcasters, breached his licence conditions, but he was recalled. You are correct. And in the case of PC Andrew Harper, I really do not think you are going to find very much purchase among our listeners tonight for the view that leniency should be meted out to people that were convicted of his killing in the most appalling way. I mean, a dragging death of a serving police constable, and you're certainly not going to get support for your views on that case from Jeff in Bishop Stortford, who was our first caller on the programme this evening, a former police officer, absolutely furious about the way in which the government has set the stage for the killers of PC Harper, who have shown no contrition whatsoever, who were seen smiling and joking at one another as they were taken away to begin serving their sentence. You're just not going to find much purchase here tonight for the view that PC Andrew Harper has culpability for the manner of his own death. Let's go to Rose in Battersea. Good evening, Rose.
Good evening, Simon. Firstly, just to say I'm really appalled at your last caller and what he said about PC Harper being a bit of an idiot. So not true. And I'm a former prison officer, and I'd like to say that I don't believe any frontline prison officers, governors, etc., will be happy with this idea that these two people are eligible for being released. But also, it's important to remember that it's the word eligible. So they have to be deemed not at risk before they can get released.
So you think there's a possibility they won't be released as part of these rolling releases?
I can't say, but it's...
Because the family's clearly been told they will be.
if they've been told that they've been approved, then yeah, that's it. Unfortunately.
I mean, so the way this works is that there are going to be 5,000 releases over a 10-month period starting in October. So that would suggest 500 people a month for 10 months. And it could therefore be fully 10 months after October before the killers of PC Harper find themselves released. I mean, it's possible, I suppose, that there will be some kind of action, as we've talked about earlier in the hour, to review the situation in which they find themselves. But, I mean, it is a question, this, isn't it, Rose, of where you draw the line. So where would you draw the line?
Personally, I've worked in the prison service for 20 years. The kind of offences I think is the sort of recidivist drug possession offences. I think if you could build drug rehab centres and they go through that route rather than taking up prison spaces, because some of those sentences are short but it's still taking up prison spaces. Immigration removal centres, because you've got a proportion of prisoners who are no longer prisoners, they're now detainees. So they're eligible for removal, and there's no space in a removal centre, so they're in prison as detainees. They're taking up spaces as well.
So you think that there is an approach that the government could be taking? And certainly, look, let's give Andy Burnham some time here, because he has said that he's kick-starting this is the beginning of a process, right?
Yeah, this has been a long problem. I mean, I can't remember a point where the prisons weren't overcrowded, to be honest with you.
Well, and certainly they've become far more overcrowded over the course of the last 16 years, 14 of which, of course, were under the aegis of the Conservative Party. Rose, thanks very much indeed for calling the programme. Let's go to Camden. Jane is there tonight. Good evening, Jane.
Hey, Simon, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. What would you like to say?
Again, I just want to echo Rose's comments about George. George needs to have his head read. I think there's another avenue that the government could look at, and that is sending some of the prisoners overseas, doing a deal with another country, saying, look, it's a national crisis. We need to do what we can in order to free up space, and so what we need to do is ship some of them, some of the worst ones off. El Salvador might be a good example.
What, you're going to follow the Donald Trump example of sending them to El Salvador?
As crazy as it sounds, why not? That would have to be for the most heinous crimes. I think murder, paedophilia, rapists, you name it. Send them over.
But Jane, I can understand the thirst for doing something like that. You're not talking about foreign nationals. You're talking about homegrown, worst of the worst criminals.
I'm talking about both. I think what we need to be doing is that the Home Office needs to get a grip. Those people who are in the prisons who are failed asylum seekers need to be sent back. As stark as that sounds, this is why we're in the problem that we're in. We are being all things to all people all of the time, and we're not putting national interest first. We are too busy flip-flopping around, trying to accommodate everybody's human rights. And I get it. I fully support human rights. But I think at some point we have to have balance, and we've got to be sensible. This is a national crisis. But
Jane, I'm going to disagree with you, because I'm not sure that you can fully support human rights if you want to take what basically would be extrajudicial action. And I understand the appeal of the idea. And say to the worst of the worst, even if they're British citizens and their families are here in the UK, you're off to El Salvador. Like it or lump it, tough luck, that's where you're going. There's no legal justification for doing that. You'd have to pass a whole raft of new laws to do that.
Absolutely. And I totally agree. It's not a quick fix. And, I'm giving El Salvador as an example because it's a terrible place. I'm talking about human rights for the people who actually are decent citizens. That's where it should apply. If you do something, hang on, Simon, sorry. If you do something where you rape someone, and like the likes of Fred West, for example, on earth will be clothing, feeding, housing him. It is without doubt that he did what he did. There are lots of people in that situation that are in prisons that we shouldn't have prisons. We should be moving them out. Dare I say it, we have to free up space. we look at capital punishment. It sounds very extreme, but we've got to do something. We cannot keep living in this world where we just keep, giving people a little slap on the hands. I mean, these guys, they've served 6 years. 6 years for murder.
Well, manslaughter.
Okay, manslaughter. But then, if we carry on with this level of leniency, we will literally have a crisis in the country, because it will just be okay to go out and kill a copper. That's what people will think.
Jane, thanks very much for sharing your views tonight. That's Jane in Camden. Let me know what you think. You can call us at 0345 6060 973. Same number for WhatsApp. That it is for the phones. You can also text 84850. Coming up after the news at 8, we're going to talk about some exclusive reporting here on LBC today regarding the future of the nation's food prices. And I'm afraid it's not good news. That's coming up in 14 minutes' time, because it's 14 minutes to 8.
This is LBC.
Claire's in Carlisle.
Scott has called from Glasgow. Hi, Scott.
Jane's in Camden first. Hi, Jane.
Not all places have felt that they're part of the national story, and that is what this government is going to work every single day to change.
Hear every side of the story.
He needs to get directly to the core issues that people are feeling on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of people don't feel hope.
I would rather there be something in Manchester than have to always be completely and utterly disregarded by London.
I deplore this kind of walk into the number 10 without a mandate. Really, we should have a general election.
The regional representation that Burnham's got in his cabinet, because there's nobody from the southwest represented in that. How do we get heard?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
When your daughter's wedding guest list is double-sided, enjoy every hand-clapping second of it. Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our best savings rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply, T's and C's apply.
Now, focus on your car. That's right, the one you're ready to sell. See it clearly in your mind, waiting to be sold. We can make it disappear. Just watch carefully. Your car sold, collected and paid for in almost no time at all. It's not magic, it's motorway. Sell your car today at motorway.co.uk.
Aha! Shiver me timbers! To the high seas! There's treasure and adventure across them waters!
Stop rocking the boat, Dad. You're making my feet wet.
Oh, sorry.
Explore Rye Pirates and Smugglers Day with kids' train tickets for £2 on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop is a story. Terms apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC with Simon Marks.
And John in Maidstone has texted the programme to say, remove the foreign prisoners back to their original country first. That would free up 10,000 places. If we have to take back 1,800, because there are 1,800 Brits serving prison sentences overseas, well, that would be a net gain of 8,200 net places. John says this country has got to be stronger. If they, the receiving countries, won't take the prisoners back, stop their foreign aid. I mean, the difficulty with that, of course, John, is that our dwindling foreign aid budgets mean that there might not be very much foreign aid to use as leverage against a number of those possible countries. But certainly Andy Burnham said today that he has asked the Justice Secretary to look at the possibility of repatriation and moving people that were convicted of offences here but are foreign nationals out of this country more rapidly. Let's go back to the phone lines. Satnam is in Newham here in London. Good evening, Satnam.
Good evening. How you doing?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you tonight?
I'm fuming, mate.
Explain why, Satnam.
I don't understand where the common sense is going. You got first responders, police, ambulance, fire brigade. These are the people who look after us. So if you hurt one of them or kill one of them, you should go to prison and the key should be thrown away. These releases that you're doing, there's no common sense left. It's like Keir Starmer when he said, listen, I'm going to rethink this through and we're going to do a report and we'll come back to you. This is what this Burnham guy has done.
Well, it's Satnam, it's slightly different. It is slightly different because Andy Burnham is, first of all, committing to these 5,000 early releases over a 10-month period, and he's calibrating who gets to be released and who doesn't by placing the focus on rapists and violent sexual offenders, including people who have been involved in grooming gangs. And I presume that you would absolutely agree that they should stay in prison. What he's not doing, and I hear your anger, and I heard the anger and fury of Jeff in Bishop Stortford and other listeners that have been texting into the programme, is he's not drawing the line where you would like it to be drawn so that no one that's been involved in the killing, manslaughter, murder, either of police officers, ambulance workers, fire brigade representatives. I mean, that's where you want the line to be drawn. And I think you've got a very strong point.
I have got a strong point. But look, you just now said that Andy Burnham said today, that I'm going to ask a judge to do something, blah, 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 blah. He's the Prime Minister. Why don't he say, this is what I want you to do? Do it.
Well, because unfortunately, much as we all would like it to be easy, it's just not that easy, Satnam. I mean, there are laws in place and they haven't got time to pass a whole raft of new laws to get things done at the pace that we would all like to see it being done. I mean, let's look at what he said.
Can I tell you the answer to what you just said?
Go on.
Bring Donald Trump for Prime Minister.
Well, so you'd like to see, I understand that, the desire that you're expressing, although I'm not sure that Donald Trump has been effective, as you may know if you've listened to my coverage from the United States, at getting many of the things done that he wants to get done. But you're saying you would like systems to be bypassed, guardrails to be bypassed in order basically to treat this like an emergency.
Yes, 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 and yes.
Satnam, I thank you very much for calling in. I understand the emotion that you are expressing. I mean, just to look at what Andy Burnham has specifically announced today, he's reviewing the indefinite sentences that were handed out between 2005 and 2012, imprisonment for public protection, that he says has left hundreds of people in prison since they were young, but without any prospect of release. And there are many activists out there that argue that those IPP sentences need another look and could very rapidly result in the release of some people that pose no threat to society. Second, he's asked to look at the early release of more women prisoners. Third, he's asked officials to consider faster return of foreign national offenders to their country of origin. Joe is in Camden, another caller from Camden tonight. Joe, good evening. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hello. I believe this should be a multi-angled approach.
Absolutely.
Which should include looking at Holland, Amsterdam, where there are prisons there which are half or three-quarters empty. One, it's close to shores, it's close to the UK, it's a European country, to negotiate for a temporary, short term, to send the prisoners over there to rehouse them until 2031 and then to bring them back to the UK, to the prisons here. To have them, the electronic tags, walking around with the possibility of a third of them reoffending can make many people even more tense and stressful walking the streets in safety, for example. So why not look at that option as well?
Joe, do you believe that by 2031 the government will have succeeded in building new prisons to house an additional 14,000 offenders?
Well, that's what the government are saying, and that's what we need to have trust in this government. But in the meantime, if there are prison spaces available in prisons overseas in Europe, in Holland, Amsterdam, that are available, maybe there'd be some rent involved. but to temporarily house them there.
And what do you think about the idea of potentially getting the military involved, as one of our listeners was suggesting earlier, throwing up some prison camps, essentially, for low-level offenders, so you keep the worst of the worst firmly behind locked doors?
Well, then it's using up our space, finding more personnel, going through all the paperwork, when it could be much easier to negotiate with the Dutch government. The prisons are there, the space is available. Let's look at that option as well as all the other options. People with manslaughter cases can go there, where you draw the line, just underneath the line, rather than being out on the streets, perhaps reoffending. Look at those other prisons in Europe. Holland, I've just mentioned, there could be others.
Absolutely. Joe, thanks very much indeed for the suggestion. I mean, there is a question, of course, about whether other governments would be willing to take our prisoners, and the devil would be in the details, particularly in terms of payment for that. Tom from London says, remember how quickly they got the Nightingale hospitals up? A few weeks, then barely used. They could do the same with prisons while they work out how to fix the short sentence problem. Let's go to Hasmain in Aylesbury. Good evening, Hasmain. What would you like to say?
Good evening. So basically, my idea is, so they want to let out 5,000 prisoners over 10 months.
Correct.
In the prison system, there's ACAT for the highest, like the serious offenders, go to ACAT. Then there's BCAT, which is like the next one in line, then CCAT and DCAT. So when you get arrested for a normal offence, not violent or anything like murder or anything like that, you get sent to a BCAT or a CCAT jail. Now, after you're in the prison system for a while, you can prove yourself to be a good person, that you rehabilitated, and then you get moved down to DCAT. Now, in DCAT currently, there's around 4,500 to 6,500 prisoners. All these prisoners have been through the prison system where they've proved that they can do courses, they've proved that they're rehabilitated, they're either looking for work or they are working, they've already been out, like they do day releases where they go out for one day, they go to work and stuff, so they're already half into the community. Why don't they just release all of them prisoners? And that will just make the space, enough space for now, which would be temporary, and then as the prison system, the prisoners that are in the system now, they can move on to DCAT, and that could be the flowing system for now, whilst they build more prisons and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, and it seems like it would be the obvious approach to take, right? Allow the lowest risk offenders out so that you can keep not just the rapists and the violent sexual offenders, but you could also keep the killers of PC Andrew Harper and others like him inside.
Yeah, so it's also that, and then the other point to add on to that is these lot have been through the system, so they've already been rehabilitated and stuff like that. Like they've already regretted their crime, had remorse for it, decided that they want to change, and now they're showing action for change. So why don't we give them a chance? They're all in prison, or most of them they'll be there in there for with DCAT, I think it's the last 18 months or 2 years or something like that, up to 2 years, you can go to DCAT. So some of them have been in there for about a year and a half. They've been showing it that in DCAT you can get a job. There's people in there that work a 9-to-5 job, but they just, instead of going home, they go to jail. Why can't that person just be out and just go home?
Hasmain, thanks very much indeed for calling in and wrapping our hour up with a very interesting contribution. Hasmain in Aylesbury. Harry in London has texted in to say, as a serving member of the military, can the public stop seeing us as a break glass for every single issue? I think it's fair to say we have much more important things to attend to. And I'm sure that this is a conversation that we're going to be coming back to over the course of the evening here on LBC, and of course as Andy Burnham continues to review this situation regarding prison overcrowding. Into our next hour, and I'm afraid I've got bad news for you, because the longer the summer drought continues and the longer the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, the higher food prices are going to rise, and soon. The National Farmers Union sounded the alarm today, saying that water supplies need to be prioritised for food production immediately.
We're saying to the government, this must be a springboard for action. How do we rebuild the resilience of the UK food system?
Are you ready for the price shock at the supermarkets that is coming, especially at a time when we know a growing number of families across the country are already finding it difficult to make ends meet? You can't even grow your own because of the hosepipe ban. With crops at risk of failing thanks to climate change, should we build a strategic food reserve?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, Andy Burnham has promised to build 14,000 prison places after having to apologise to the family of PC Andrew Harper. It's emerged 2 of his 3 killers are still eligible for early release following a change to the law. That's despite the Prime Minister pausing the rollout of the next phase of the scheme designed to tackle overcrowding. Victims Minister Alex Davies-Jones has told LBC a responsible government has to make difficult decisions.
Look, my heart goes out to Lizzie Harper and every other victim who will be concerned by the news today. And I am aware that exemptions, and we have put those in place, murderers, rapists, child sex abusers will not be released early as part of the scheme. But if we are to be able to lock up dangerous offenders, then we need to have the room. And that is the reality of the situation that we're in.
Dozens of people have been returned to France after a dinghy caught fire in the English Channel. More than 170 people were rescued as a result of efforts from French and British authorities and the RNLI. Qatar says mediators are making progress towards ending the war between the United States and Iran, sending oil prices sharply lower. But Iran's denied President Trump's claim that talks already underway. The Court of Appeal has agreed to an expansion to Gatwick Airport that should go ahead. The government's won a legal challenge after claiming a second runway will bring £1 billion a year to the British economy. Jonathan Essex is vice chair of the Gatwick Area Conservation Campaign. He's told LBC he's disappointed.
Gatwick Airport downgraded the true climate impact by about an order of magnitude. And then that was trumped by the claims Gatwick made that this would result in a massive increase in business flights. And we didn't think there's any real justification for that. But the courts effectively allowed the Secretary of State to use the phrase economic growth and business benefits without any evidence to support it to justify a massive increase.
And Britain's Olympic and Paralympic winter sports athletes will receive a record £33 million of funding in the cycle leading up to the 2030 Games. UK Sport made the decision in response to the 3 gold medals won at this year's Milano Cortina event. In the city, the FTSE 100 is closed up 21 points at 10,879. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather, scattered showers in the north and west tonight, drier and partly cloudy in the south and east, a low of 12 degrees. Tomorrow there will be heavy thundery rain in the north, cloudier with patchy drizzle for Wales and the Midlands, but sunnier in the south with highs of 26 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Simon Marks.
And I am in for Ian Dale once again tonight. It's great to be with you. Coming up at 9, we're going to talk about redemption. Is it possible? Have you or anyone in your life experienced it? We're going to talk about it in light of the Conservative Party candidate for Somerset Council, who turns out to be a former neo-Nazi who served a prison sentence for assaulting a police officer, but who insists he is now a different man. At least one of his victims doesn't believe it. But do you think it's possible that people can turn their lives around? We'll talk about that after the news at 9. This hour, there are growing fears tonight about the possibility of food prices rising, with the impacts that will have, of course, on the rate of inflation, as two things constrain our ability to rely on plentiful supplies in the nation's supermarkets. First of all, of course, the drought. The longer half of England and the whole of Wales gets no meaningful rain, the greater the risk for both crops and livestock on the nation's farms. The National Farmers Union said today that as a matter of urgency, the government now needs to make water supplies a priority for farmers, and that our domestic food production should be considered formally part of the nation's critical infrastructure, not least because of the second aspect of this crisis, the ongoing closure of the Strait of Hormuz. It doesn't only impact supplies of oil, it's also a crucial waterway for the passage of fertiliser, and that's also critical for the farming community. Among the NFU's demands today, the creation of a risk register for vulnerable business water users that would give livestock, poultry and high-value horticulture producers priority access to water in the national interest. Is that a good idea? Is it time to go even further than that? We have no strategic food reserve in the UK. We haven't got a butter mountain. We haven't got a cheese mountain. We haven't got secure facilities containing stacks of tinned foods, dried meat, or any other kind of emergency supplies. Do we now need to be thinking about that, given that climate change is here to stay and the Strait of Hormuz may not reopen fully for a very long while to come? If you're a farmer, how bad is it out there, and how worried are you, not just about your own business's viability, but about the nation's food supply in general? How precarious are things? And if you're running a family, do you even feel prepared? Are you even informed enough about a situation in which prices are likely to climb substantially in the weeks ahead, not months, weeks, thanks to the heat wave and Donald Trump's war on Iran? We're going to start this hour by talking to LBC's South East of England correspondent Emma Core, who filed an exclusive report for us today on the high food prices and restricted choices that may soon be coming to a supermarket near you. Emma, tell us about what you found. Good evening.
Good evening, Simon. Well, the warning from the food industry is pretty stark. Britain imports more than half of its food, particularly fresh fruits, vegetables, salads, mostly from Europe, but the heat waves, the drought, the wildfires we've seen in France and Spain, and of course the dry weather here, the very dry weather, there's a real concern that supplies will tighten. You mentioned weeks. Farmers I've been speaking to are saying by the autumn we really are going to feel this, and this means higher prices for shoppers. Phil Plug, who's head of the Cold Chain Federation, has told me shoppers should expect to feel the impact very soon.
You're going to pay more for your food, much more for your food come this winter, then actually that should be the norm. Food will be more expensive and will be less available. We should walk around the supermarket tomorrow and actually look at all the fruit and vegetable, all of the different types of bread, and we should start to look at them and say, do you know, this is probably as much as we're ever going to see.
But the effects are already being felt by farmers here, Simon. I've been to visit a farm in West Sussex, up on the South Downs, run by Caroline Harriott, who has over 1,000 acres. And we were looking out at such a kind of barren landscape, yellow, dry. And she says this year's harvest came unusually early because crops dried out so quickly. They then had to combine those crops in the middle of the night. They were starting at sort of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. rather than 10 p.m. And she's still worried now that her fields, because they've not had any rain, they're a huge fire risk.
The ears of grain, they should be big and fat, whereas they're not. They're a bit shriveled. It's been a very unusual, a very difficult harvest. I am carrying around fire extinguishers in every tractor, in every truck. We've got fire sticks. It's tinder dry.
And the state of those crops, you could hear there, the yield is down. They are so dry, so much smaller than usual. So for making things like, staples like bread, there is going to be less product around. And this is the case for many farmers. And it's not just crops, of course, that are under pressure. Near that farm was a trout farm. Of course, they rely on rain to fill their ponds. And warmer water has meant production had to be cut back as well. Daniel Young says they're simply not able to produce as much fish as usual. He runs this trout farm in West Sussex.
I'm going to lose an awful lot of efficiency on my stock this year. A lot of aquatic animals, they're cold-blooded, so what happens in this warmer environment is the water actually holds less oxygen, but it's getting warmer, so that animal actually needs more oxygen, so the two polarities are fighting against each other. So fish are really, really struggling. The extremities of the summer are too profound. Whether you're growing corn out the ground or rearing a fish, it's just not going to be achievable.
And Dan warning there, if we do continue to get summers like this, farming will change because of the lack of water supply and what's going to be grown as well. What will cope in this heat? And people in the food industry I've been speaking to this week saying the impact on food prices will be felt very soon. They'll stay up as well because of the damage that's been done just by one summer. It's not like they're going to peak slightly and come back down. It looks like they will go up and be up there for a while. DEFRA have said they're looking to help farmers become more resilient to climate change, looking into building reservoirs on farmland. But at the moment, farmers are really, really worried about this longer-term impact of this summer because there's still not really any sign of meaningful rain in sight.
Emma Core, LBC South East of England correspondent, live for us on the programme tonight. I'm really grateful for you for bringing us that exclusive reporting, Emma, which I think has really helped convey the scale of the problem. And to do more of that, I'm joined now on the programme by Paul Tompkins, Deputy President of the National Farmers Union, himself a dairy farmer. Mr. Tompkins, and for those of you watching on YouTube or the LBC app or the Global Player, you'll be able to see Mr. Tompkins' livestock right behind him over his shoulder. Thanks very much indeed for joining us on the programme this evening. I think there will be listeners that will be surprised that the NFU is even having to suggest that there should be priority access to the nation's water supplies for farmers. I mean, you would think that would already exist. Good evening.
Good evening to you, and welcome to my farm in Yorkshire. It's a beautiful sunny evening.
Looks
here,
amazing.
But of course, you're absolutely right to suggest that the hot topic on every farmer's lips at the moment is water or the lack of it coming from the sky. I thought your report earlier really well articulated the concerns felt by farmers out on their fields, whether it's the grain that they're getting from their fields or the livestock that are relying on food that was originally destined for this winter's feed. But you're absolutely right to suggest that the NFU is asking for water to be recognised as part of our critical national infrastructure for growing food. And it's true to say that over recent years, we've seen a series of regulation which enshrines in law the importance of water for household consumption, really important, for nature and the environment, also really important. But we have left out that third barrier. And I don't know whether it's a result of short-term politics and a reflection of the fact that we've had 7 secretaries of state in DEFRA in the last 7 years. But so many of the solutions towards drought, unfortunately, are not going to be felt in the short term. Yes, we can find individual ways of making this drought more navigable by farmers, but so many of the solutions have to be thought long term, and that's why we need to enshrine this importance in law.
Paul Tompkins, we are already getting texts, and we often see messages like this one from listeners. Mark has texted in to say, in 60 years, I've never seen a year that farmers don't complain. It's either too wet, too cold, too hot. I think I will wait for next year for the next complaint. But there is a real sense now that we are at an inflection point, not just because of the inexorable change in the climate of this country, but also because of the very febrile nature of the international situation and the fact that farmers have to worry about where they're going to get their fertiliser supplies. I mean, the country now needs to really start taking this issue of food security much more seriously than it has done before, doesn't it?
I'll take Mark's point slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I will also remind him that, of course, farmers do like to talk about weather because it does have so much impact on what we can do. And those pressures that are felt on farm are far and wide at the moment. But I know that farmers are up for this challenge. We are facing into yet another extreme weather event. Drought today, it might be flood tomorrow, or a policy change tomorrow. I know we're up for that challenge, and we will achieve it. But I also know that it will be a whole lot easier and a whole lot more achievable with the support of government, the Environment Agency, supply chains, and of course, your listeners. And you're right to also bring into other geopolitical events here, because our food supply cannot be taken for granted. We know that the defence of this country or the security of this country is underpinned by our ability to feed ourselves. And that's why farming is so important. Food production is fundamental. And as a key ingredient of that, water must be the priority discussion of today.
And can you talk a little bit specifically about that herd of cows that are behind you? Livestock are, I understand it now, in many places being fed with winter rations that should be used in the winter because there's just not enough grassland out there for the cows to graze on.
And this, of course, it illustrates well the long-term nature of farming, because the impact of today I'm negating by forward-feeding my food conserves that I had ready for this winter. But of course, that only just stores up a further problem. It's the same for sheep farmers who are doing just the same with their lambs at the moment, feeding them hay that was already intended for feed in the winter. So the problems that drought bring to our farms get built into the food production system and therefore are felt for many months ahead. And this is the really concern that we have and why we want to raise the profile of the importance of water for food right now, because we know the agenda will change. We know that it will rain again soon at some stage. But we know that also that this message cannot fall away when it does. We have to set ourselves up to be resilient to such weather events, because I'm told and reliably informed that this is going to become more prevalent, more prolonged, more extreme in the years ahead. So let's get ourselves ready for it.
And you've used the resilience word, and I want to ask you about that. Lord Harris of Haringey, chairman of the National Preparedness Commission, has warned that the UK's lack of substantial public food reserves leaves the country highly vulnerable to being cut off from global trade routes during a major international conflict. And the argument that is advanced by resilience experts is that leaving emergency food stockpiling entirely to individual households is insufficient. What's the NFU's position on the idea of creating a strategic food reserve?
We just have to rewind just a few short years to remember post-Ukraine that we did, post-Ukraine invasion, we did see the implications of that on our shelves, whether that was eggs being rationed or tomatoes unavailable. It's hard to believe that just in the last few years we faced that scenarios. I know that we're able to continue to produce the nation's food with everyone else's support, being both your listeners, the government, Environment Agency, water companies, all combined together with a collective effort. We have the capacity on our farms to continue feeding the nation. And that's what I know the farmers across England and Wales are going to be doing today, tomorrow, and into the future.
Paul Tompkins, I'm going to let you get back to the dairy herd. Thanks very much indeed for joining us this evening on the programme. Paul is the Deputy President of the National Farmers Union, and he is, I can confirm, definitely a dairy farmer. Now it's over to you. I mean, I think we want to use this hour partly to alert you to something that I think many people just do not understand and haven't dialed into. This idea that we are going to see food shortages, we're going to see food prices rising inevitably over the course of the next few weeks. And what are our options as a country for dealing with this? Do you think it's the creation of a strategic food reserve? Do you agree with the farmers that they should be given priority access to the nation's water supplies so that you don't see crops failing in the fields? Call me and let me know what you think. 0345 6060 973. Same number for WhatsApp that it is for the phones. You can text 84850. It's 19 minutes past 8.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m.
Andy Burnham under fire today over the government's decision to let killers out of prison early. But did they have any alternative? The Prime Minister, for what it's worth, isn't here to face the backlash. He's gone on holiday after just 2 weeks in the job. His opponents say he's bunking off work already. But don't our leaders deserve a break just as much as the rest of us?
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
From countryside escapes to seaside breaks, and plenty of open roads in between, there's a Mazda for every kind of summer. Get 0% APR on selected models when ordered by the 30th of September, and keep your mind on the really important stuff, like trying to eat that ice cream before it melts. Search Mazda. Available on PCP when financed by Mazda Financial Services by the 31st of December 2026. Indemnities may be required. Terms apply. See website.
Oh, I needed this trip. Oh, lounging in the sunshine, dipping my toes in the pool.
Oh, sounds lovely. Amalfi Coast, was it?
No, Brockwell Lido, darling.
Unwind by the pool without leaving the city. Thameslink Railway, where every stop is a story.
When your husband's got his heart set on making the doer upper open plan, enjoy every thudding second of it.
Yes!
Be a step ahead with Barclays Premier, with our exclusive mortgage rates. Barclays, backing your future. Eligibility criteria apply. All mortgages are subject to application, financial circumstances and borrowing history. T's and C's apply. New Barclays mortgage applications only.
Simon Marks on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
And Annie has texted 84850 to hit back at Mark's cynicism, I think it's fair to say, about the farming community. Annie says, has Mark not realised that farmers are dependent on the correct weather? We need to educate the British population who are ignorant of where their food comes from. There is, Annie argues, a snobbiness about farming, certainly on the part of some of our listeners, she would argue. Happily, we have a farmer on the line right now. It's Cameron in Northumberland. Cameron, good evening to you. Thanks for being with us on LBC tonight. What is it like at the moment being a farmer in Northumberland at a time both of drought in parts of England and Wales and also this very uncertain time in the Strait of Hormuz with regard to fertiliser stocks? Good evening.
Yeah, good evening, Simon. Yeah, certainly it's a worrying time being a farmer at the minute. It sort of feels like we're on attack from all sides at the minute. Obviously, we've had the government recent debacles that everyone knows about, family farm tax, many other taxes, etc. And then, look, it's for what you can sell wheat at the minute, £180 a tonne. Cost of production is £200 a tonne. So you do the math, finances are pretty stretched in farming at the minute, and it doesn't help that we're having constant sort of bad weather like this. There's always bad weather in farming. That's farming for you. It's a gamble. But this is it's 1 year after another. It goes to either too rainy and we can't get onto the fields and lift the crops, to being far too dry like this year. And the problem this year was, essentially, when we sort of really needed the rain about 2 months ago before harvest, and that would just sort of fill out all the crops. It sort of fills out the grains, make them a bit more heavier. It just wasn't here, and it just means we've got pinched grain everywhere up and down the country.
Cameron, can I ask you about the economics that you just referred to with regard to the production of a tonne of, I think it was wheat? You said it costs £180 a tonne to produce, and you can sell it. Just remind me, £180 a tonne to produce, and you can sell it for £200 a tonne. Is that right?
No. It's the other way around.
The other way around.
It's £180 to sell a tonne of wheat, which is the biggest crop in the UK, but it's £200 cost of production.
And that cost of production, that additional weight on the cost of production, how much of that do you think is directly related to the closure of the Strait of Hormuz?
So before the Strait of Hormuz, it was sort of that sort of levels, if not actually a bit below it. The Strait of Hormuz isn't happening. The problem is, farming's a long-term thing. When the Strait of Hormuz happened, most people bought their fertiliser, and the worry would be this year, if it continues to be such an issue, fertiliser bills are just sky high at the minute. So a lot of farmers haven't bothered to buy their fertiliser yet, quite understandably. It's double what it generally is. And fertiliser is a big outlay. It's one of the biggest outlays, actually. And look, I think if all the shenanigans in the Middle East keep happening, certainly I can see food prices rising. That's just another cost to add to it. And as I said, fertiliser is just so expensive.
And I was asking listeners, Cameron, what they think about the idea of the creation of a strategic food reserve. But I wonder what you think about the idea of a creation of a strategic fertiliser reserve. I know that there are other countries that have been discussing that idea that don't have a strategic fertiliser reserve. The United States, for example, has a strategic oil reserve, and there's been some suggestion that it should now start thinking about doing the same for fertiliser. Should we be thinking along those lines?
Yeah, I think that's a very good idea, actually. I think when there is sort of peacetime and times are good, the government should be buying fertiliser. It's that you cannot feed the world without fertiliser. I know you have sort of Ed Miliband who actively wants to impose a fertiliser tax. That's another issue. But realistically, if we want to feed the world, you need a fertilised crops. You simply won't be able to grow enough sort of just using sort of organic methods. Although they're great, but you're just not going to feed the world. So, yeah, I think certainly national fertiliser reserve is a jolly good idea, actually.
And Cameron, in Northumberland, you're not in the drought zone, are you?
No, so we're actually all right. We've actually had somewhat of an all right harvest. The northeast, it's the only part of England, I believe, that isn't in the drought zone. So we're all right. But I've got friends south of Manchester, and they're just having horrendous harvest yields that you'd sort of expect. Well, they're sort of down 25%, if not 50%, which is horrendous. Like, it really goes and hits the bottom line.
Cameron, thanks so much indeed for joining us on the programme tonight. Cameron's a farmer in Northumberland, relating his own experiences and the experiences of friends of his in the farming community. Let's go to Dagenham. And Di is there this evening. Di, good evening. What's your view on what we can all be doing to develop some resilience to the possibility of food shortages and price rises? Good evening.
Good evening, Simon. Yeah, I hope the volume's okay now. I've been reading a lot about vertical farming, hydroponic stuff, you know.
Di, can I just interrupt you? The phone line's pretty muddy. I think what we might do is we're going to try and clean it up and come back to you in a moment. Let's see if we can do something about improving that, because I do want to hear what you had to say. Let's go to North Ayrshire in southwest Scotland, where we find Joe tonight. Good evening, Joe.
Hi there. This is massively frustrating. I've got an environmental science background. Some of us have been worrying about this for decades. I'll try and keep it short and simple, but years ago, in a beautiful land, long ago, we had a landscape that naturally acted as a sponge. So when it rained, we had trees on the hills, we had rivers that meandered, and we had, marshland and wetland, and it all acted as a sponge. So when it rained, the rain percolated slowly through the system, and that meant that we had a steady flow of water that was available summer and winter. But what's happened, of course, was that we stripped the land of its trees. We put sheep on the hills that ate all the vegetation down to like millimetres high. So the soil runs off, the water runs off. There is nothing to keep the water on the land. We culverted the rivers. We made them straight. We made the water go faster. We drained the wetlands. We drained the marshlands. So the water just shoots out to the sea. But, of course, there's such a vast volume of it when it does rain, and it's because it's not being held up on the hills, then it overflows and it goes into our cities and it goes into our towns and it goes into our villages and it goes places where we don't want it to go. It's catastrophically badly managed landscape management. And I would just like to just posit the idea, how many environmental scientists or ecologists or conservationists or landscape managers do we have in Parliament? Because I'm not aware of a single one. I'm nearly 60 and I don't know of one.
I mean, that's a really interesting question, Jo. If you were in Parliament, and it sounds to me like you've got all sorts of potential to be in Parliament, what would you be telling Andy Burnham to be doing? What kind of legislation would you want to draw up?
We need to rethink. We just desperately need to rethink. We are at a critical point. I mean, listening to those farmers is heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Thinking about people who are struggling to buy their shopping. Families, young families who already have it hard, and their food bills are going up and up and up. The whole thing is catastrophic. It's heartbreaking. We've got the international worries. We should be sustaining ourselves food-wise.
But how would you do it, Jo? How would you do it?
Right, so we need to rethink the way that we run the landscape. We need to start rewilding. I know that people hate, a lot of people hate that word. We need to start reforesting the areas that can be reforested. We need to keep the farmland. That will help the farmland because it will help to soak up that water and it will help us to have a steady flow. You could absolutely build reservoirs, no problem. But it's like reinventing the wheel. It was already there. The landscape was already holding the water for us, but we trashed it and we diverted it so that it went out to the sea. And, a complete waste.
Jo, what an interesting perspective you brought to the conversation. Jo, with a background in environmental science, relating how she believes we've done tremendous harm to our own environment and thus contributed to these problems, and suggesting that we should address that as one possible branch of the solution to all of this. We're going to carry on talking about food security and what the country should be doing to build resilience for the price shocks that are coming, the shortages over the short term that may be coming, and longer term resilience to deal with all of this. Coming up after the news, with those concerns about the impact that Donald Trump's war on Iran is having on food security, Qatar says it is mediating talks between Tehran and Washington. Is there any chance of the Strait of Hormuz actually reopening, or have we heard it all before? We'll get some thoughts on that next. But now at 29 minutes to 9, the news headlines come from Katie Dartford.
The Justice Secretary has apologised to the family of PC Andrew Harper as two of his killers are still expected to be released early to ease the prison crisis. Changes to the initiative will mean offenders convicted of rape, serious child sex offences and grooming will now no longer get out early, but those convicted of manslaughter charges can still be. Dozens of people have been returned to France after a dinghy caught fire in the English Channel. More than 170 people were rescued as a result of efforts from the French and British authorities and the RNLI. And Princess Eugenie has given birth to her third child in Portugal. Buckingham Palace says she had a daughter at a hospital in Lisbon yesterday evening. LBC weather, scattered showers in the north and west tonight, drier and partly cloudy in the south and east, a low of 12 degrees.
This is LBC.
Take summer by storm with Kia. Introducing the new Kia Sportage Storm, a unique limited edition of the UK's favourite family SUV. Test drive the award-winning Kia Sportage today and order yours by the 31st of August to get 5.9% APR representative and up to £3,000 PCP finance deposit contribution. Search Kia Take Summer by Storm. Kia. Movement that inspires. T's and C's apply. Kia Finance. To verify, visit kia.com/UK/favourite.
This is the life. Out here in the actual vineyard with the sun shining, sipping a glass of Chardonnay without a care in the world. And just a stone's throw on the train. La vie est belle, non?
John, for the 5th time, please stop doing the voice. We're in Sussex.
Download the Southern Railway app and visit vineyards across the southeast. Plus, save a third with Group Save on off-peak journeys. Southern Railway, where every stop
is a story. Terms apply.
Your holiday park home will be a great investment.
You'll lose thousands on your holiday park home.
All the fees are fully explained.
There are hidden fees you're unaware of.
Yeah, you can easily sell anytime.
You'll be charged a fortune if you sell. You're not always told both sides of the story. If you bought a home on a holiday park, contact Holiday Park Advice Centre. Because if you were missold, we can help. Text ASSIST to 78900. Fees apply.
This is LBC with Simon Marks.
And we're going to come back to your calls about the future of food security in the UK in a moment. But first, where do things stand with regard to negotiations that might advance the prospect of getting the Strait of Hormuz reopened? Today, the news agency Reuters is reporting that the United States has now used virtually all of its precision strike missiles, with its stockpiles almost depleted. So much for the decapitation of Iran that President Trump was promising only yesterday if talks fell apart. Today, intermediaries from Qatar said mediation efforts between Washington and Tehran are continuing, but there doesn't appear to be any indication that any kind of direct talks are in the works. To find out where things stand tonight, I'm joined this evening from Washington by Ross Harrison, Senior Fellow of the US-based think tank, the Middle East Institute, and he is the author of the book, Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy. Mr. Harrison, thanks very much indeed for being with us on LBC this evening here in London, this afternoon there in Washington, D.C. Where do you think things currently stand on these talks? President Trump, of course, said talks were taking place. The Iranians said they're not. Qatar says it's trying to mediate some kind of discussion. Is there any sign of anything moving forwards? Good afternoon to you, Washington time.
Thank you. Thank you, Simon. Listen, it's hard to know because we've been through this so many times before, where Donald Trump says there's a negotiating track that's open and the Iranians are desperate to negotiate and the Americans are talking to them, and we find out that there are talks going on, but they're indirect talks, either through Qatar or Pakistan or Egypt or Turkey. So we really don't 100% know. What we do know, Simon, is that there have been talks going on between Tehran and Muscat, Oman, the Omanis, and the Iranians are talking about some kind of an arrangement by which when the strait opens, then what is the arrangement by which they will navigate that process, both during the conflict and after the conflict? But in terms of where does it actually stand, I don't think anybody right now knows.
But that conversation that's underway between the Iranians and the Omanis, I mean, there are reports indicating that it's all about the money, right? With both the Iranians and the Omanis talking to one another about splitting, if not tolls per vessel that might be charged for tankers that pass through the Strait of Hormuz, service fees that would cover some sort of costs that the Omanis and the Iranians would say were involved in the passage of those tankers. President Trump at one point, just a few weeks ago, threatened to attack Oman, an American ally, if it decided to go into league with the Iranians in precisely that kind of an arrangement. So if that's what arises from this, I mean, is he going to do a 180 on that and say, oh, OK, you guys keep the service fees? It seems pretty unlikely.
No, I mean, listen, I think there's two issues here. One is getting the strait open and how Iran can maintain leverage, because that's ultimately what they're trying to do here. Yes, eventually it's going to be about money. How that shakes out after the war, we really don't know. But it's really the rules of the road, or the rules of the strait, if you will, that they're trying to figure out. Because the first objective is to get the strait open. And part of that requires under what condition they will get the strait open. Because remember, the last time this was an issue, it was after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed, and there was a dispute as to how the United States and Iran would navigate the strait. The Iranians basically said they were in charge of opening the strait, which meant that the ships had to come close to their coast. And then what the Americans did is bring the ships close to the Omani coast. So the first goal is not necessarily about the money. It's really the rules of the road. And what Donald Trump will accept, I think at this point in time, given how this conflict next round, if it does accelerate and escalate, could actually bring in more actors, and Donald Trump could lose control of the conflict. I think right now his goal is to get the strait open, get the Iranians to agree not to attack ships. They will then end the blockade, and they're trying to navigate through that right now. But we just don't have any details, Simon, at this point.
So, Mr. Harrison, your book is called Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy. So I'm going to ask you to decode Iran's current foreign policy. They will be reading that Reuters report tonight that suggests the United States has now used virtually all of its precision strike missiles with absolute glee, won't they?
Well, of course they will. I mean, their goal in terms of their strategy, because each strategy has to have a goal, their goal is twofold. The regime survives, and that seems to be the case, and they recreate deterrence. And the fact that the United States has little appetite right now, we believe, to increase and escalate further, given the risks, their goal has been achieved. At that point in time, they will have recreated deterrence. If this war ends and they can have some hold over the strait, and then we have to question what happens on the nuclear issue. But their strategy is basically to make the battlefield so complex, Simon, that it's almost impossible for the United States and earlier Israel to deal with all those contingencies. That's the ultimate. That was the strategy. It's an asymmetric strategy. That's the strategy they use. And at this point in time, it appears, at heavy cost to them, it appears as if they've been successful.
Ross Harrison, I'm enormously grateful to you. I hope you'll come back on the programme again another night. Thanks very much indeed for joining us from Washington. Senior Fellow with the think tank, the Middle East Institute, based in Washington, D.C., and the author of Decoding Iran's Foreign Policy. Let's go back to our conversation about food security here in the UK, which, of course, is becoming increasingly insecure, partly because of the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Sue is in Crystal Palace. Good evening, Sue.
Oh, hello there. Hi.
How are you tonight?
Yeah, good. I'm glad you're talking about this.
I am too, because I think it's an under-discussed topic. I really do. I don't think we've talked enough about it. So what do you think we should be doing?
Well, what we should be doing for a start off is, if I could just say that most people, when they put their data on the computer, they want to save it. They save it to the cloud, yeah? Mm-hmm. And they don't realise that the cloud is not up in the sky. It's in huge data centres. I mean, massive. And those data centres take between 5 and 50 million gallons of water a day to cool machinery. And that water cannot be put back into the drinking water system. It's too toxic. So Andy Burnham could have stopped approving planning permissions for these data centres straight away and help the farmers.
It's very interesting you raised that point, Sue, because Mark from Halifax, who's another one of our listeners, has texted in to say, how about all these companies that want to build data centres in the UK? To get a licence to do this, they should have to build either a water treatment plant or a desalination plant on a tidal river where the water is naturally replaced every 12 hours. They would then be able to use the water and pump it into the system to be able to be used for irrigation. What do you think about that idea?
Well, they have talked about sealed units, but they can still only use that water in a sealed unit 7 times. So they're going to face the same problem. And the thing I would say is, can we trust them? Because they've been building these, they've been buying up countryside, Greenbelt, and building these centres for years now. And there's already, I think there's 240 at the moment in Britain. And within 5-10 years, there'll be another 200. There'll be 400, they reckon, pretty soon. And they're massive things. Their noise pollution is incredible. And can we trust them? Because where have they been getting rid? Where have they been disposing of this water? They've been taking it from rivers and lakes and God knows what else. But where are they disposing of the toxic version afterwards? Where have they been doing that? So how can we trust them when they say now that they're going to deal with it? Because it's not economically viable for them to deal with it, as you just said. And there is no places there to deal with it. And the other thing, is when they go, because they will all end up in the sky with Elon Musk's satellites, he plans to have them all up in space.
Right.
And they won't need to be called up there because it will be cool.
Yes, exactly. Naturally cool, yeah.
Then who's going to decommission all the ones down here?
Well, and even before you build all of those data centres that you are talking about, there is clarity that by the year 2050, England is going to be facing a daily public water shortage of nearly 5 billion litres. Imagine 5 billion 1 litre bottles of water. That is how much water on a daily basis England alone is going to be short by 2050. And 2050, I mean, I hope I'm still knocking around in 2050. It's not that far off.
Well, it's going to be before that because he will have his satellites all ready to go very soon, with the 10 years probably. So a lot of the centres, most of them, will go up into space. But at the moment, they're using, they reckon, 8.5 billion gallons a day in Britain now, before they build the next 20. And just one other thing I want to say, in Brick Lane in London, central London, they were going to build this massive data centre, and there was such an opposition that the council turned it down straight away. And Andy Burnham has just intervened and allowed it to go ahead.
Well, I'm not familiar with that particular case, Sue, but I can tell you that the issue of data centres is going to become a massive political football, as you obviously already know. Over in the United States, Kathy Hochul, who is the governor of New York, a few weeks ago became the first governor to sign a moratorium on the construction of data centres and said unless and until there are rules of the road in place that get the tech companies to pay for the costs and the implications, the consequences of these data centres, she was not going to allow them to be built because she was not going to stand for New Yorkers to be footing the bill. So this is a huge political issue tied in to food insecurity that is absolutely about to dawn here, and in some places, as you rightly observe, has already dawned. Thanks very much indeed for calling the programme. Lots more of you calling in. If anybody out there's into vertical farming, I'd be interested in hearing about that. If we don't hear about it tonight, we might do it another evening, because that's another possible way that one can alleviate some of the problems that the country may soon be facing. It's Simon Marks in for Ian Dale on LBC. It is 14 minutes to 9.
On the latest episode of The Newsagents.
Is the EU starting to turn on Spain over its failure to handle the migrant crisis on its border with Africa in the enclave of Ceuta?
Get the latest episode of The Newsagents with Emily Maitlis, John Sopel and Lewis Goodall. Listen or watch on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Pick up more sun cream. Impromptu picnic. Late night cinema trip. Do more this summer, hop on and off with the Weekend Hopper. Get unlimited weekend bus and tram journeys for £1.75 per day every Saturday and Sunday from the 25th of July. Plan your journey with the TfL Go app. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters. Offer valid from 4:30am on the 25th of July until 23:59 Monday the 31st of August. Always use the same card or device when touching in. For more information, search TfL Hopper.
Okay, I want you to close your eyes and think of your car. Now I want you to imagine yourself selling that car and getting a really great price for it. You just got the best offer for your car, like 500,000 other customers. It's not magic, it's motorway. Sell your car for more at motorway.co.uk. 84% of sellers got more than market price for their car, validated against 2 independent sources. Visit motorway.co.uk/claims.
Who could you be with Pension B? When I'm ready, I can withdraw flexibly or set up a regular income. Withdrawals from 55, 57 from 2028.
Simon Marks on LBC. Text 84850.
Stephen has texted in to say orbital data centres are a pipe dream. They're totally unfeasible and have been thoroughly debunked umpteen times. Stephen, you need to go and tell that to Elon Musk, because Elon Musk and SpaceX are proposing launching up to 1 million satellites into low Earth orbit to build space-based orbital data centres. And the timeline for that, demonstration launches are going to begin as late as next as early as late 2027, with commercial deployments following in 2028. So he certainly thinks that it's feasible, but let's see who's right. Let's go to Nikki, a first-time caller to LBC from Rochester in Kent. Good evening, Nikki. Thanks very much for calling in.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, thanks. How are you tonight? Welcome to LBC.
Yeah, so I was watching LBC and I was like this. I'm absolutely fuming, not about the farmers, because the farmers are working their butts off to get people to get the food that they need. But the thing is that I think that the government should actually try and help, the farmers, because this pipe ban, I think that at least they should just unban it and try and make the water supply for the farmers. And,
I don't think there's a hosepipe ban for the farmers, Nikki. I think what the National Farmers Union is saying is that the farmers should be given priority access to water supplies, that water supplies for farms should be considered a national security priority. Now, would you agree with that? Oh, I think we've lost Nikki. We've lost Nikki in Rochester in Kent. Let's go to Clapham. David is there. David, good evening to you.
Oh, hi. I just tuned in and heard the discussion on data centres.
Yes.
So, having worked in the industry for about 28 years, networks, connectivity, data centres, the lady made some good points, but her figures are quite incorrect. We've got about 450 data centres here in the UK, not 200 and something. So the UK and Germany are the two densest countries for data centres. And, yeah, they do use a lot of water, although a lot of them use ambient cooling, which is air cooling as well. So that's been for over a decade, has been in a lot of DCs. So it's not just water. And, this thing about data centres in satellites, a load of baloney when I heard it, to use an American term, and you obviously do a lot of news with the States, because you can't scale it. They can't be big enough. And one of the issues with satellite is latency.
Sorry, you're talking about the orbital ones, David?
Yeah, it's a load of nonsense, because you can't build them big enough, but it's the connectivity. To send data there and back is up to a satellite, which is a lot longer than on a terrestrial network or a subsea network. So they're never going to replace the large data centres, and billions is going to be invested in the UK in more new data centres that are being built already. But
first of all, do you think Elon Musk's wasting his time? Because he definitely doesn't think he is, in terms of trying to develop these orbital.
There'll be some applications for it, but it will never replace all the big data centres around the world, because what you need to power, like AI, you can't get the power in the satellite. You also made another point. You were talking about food, I heard, when I just tuned in a short while ago.
Before we go there, David, that is what we're talking about, absolutely. But can I just go to the point that our listener Mark was making, who said, if you want to build a data centre in this country, you should be required to build a desalination plant and to take advantage. If you want to use the water that exists, because we're a coastal country, you need to desalinate. Do you think that's a good idea?
It could be. I mean, over 30 years ago, or 40 years ago, about nearly, I worked in an industry where a lot of my clients were the royal families in the Middle East, and they were building desalination plants there. And I thought, wow, great. Why don't we do it here in the UK? And then later on, I found out how much they actually cost to build and run and how much power they use. So this is the issue. It's great cleaning water, but what resources are you using to actually do that?
Well, you could use the resources of the tech companies and make them build the desalination plants. But now let's go to food security. What was the point you wanted to make about that?
Well, I think when I tuned in, you were talking about the problem in the Straits at the moment and the war with America and Iran and, shipping food. Our big problem here is actually growing food. We don't grow enough of the food that we rely on, and that's a big issue.
Well, and that ties in, David, with something that Paul has texted the programme. He says the suggestion that we could sustain ourselves by farming, and we were talking earlier to a deputy leader of the National Farmers Union. He says it's complete nonsense. We haven't had a sustainable native food supply since the 12th century. well, we may not be self-sufficient in food, but we do have a pretty vigorous farming community, and they need help, especially now, given the drought, and also the fact that the Strait of Hormuz shutdown means that, as we were hearing, next year, fertiliser costs are going to go through the roof.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm forgetting the saying, what was it, living hand to mouth? I mean, they're barely surviving, and UK farmers aren't helped the way French farmers are. But, you know, I've got relatives in all of the Americas, from Canada, US, Mexico, South America. I was abroad in one of the countries there for a month, and as my wife said, who's from one of those countries, wow, maybe we should just live here, because if things went bad, I won't say which country it is, she said, we're self-sufficient. We've got all the food we need. It's all grown here.
David, thanks very much indeed for calling the programme. David in Clapham, who had a bit of expertise for us on data centres. Peter in Morpeth has texted to say current government policy prioritises energy generation over farming, which increases imports. It needs to put food production before energy generation. Let's see what Pauline has to say. She's in Greenwich this evening. Evening, Pauline.
Good evening, and I've been listening to your programme very avidly. I've agreed with absolutely everything I've heard about water and desalination. I think that's excellent. I'm going back to the war, really. The war effort, we were encouraged to dig for victory and produce our own food if we could. My father told me they were even digging up grass verges in streets so that the locals could plant vegetables there instead of the grass. And the Ministry of Food used to even do rationing. And I saw some of my father's old leaflets with potato Pete and things like that, advertising the dig for victory. I think the King even had the moat at Windsor Castle or somewhere like that, one of the castles, turned over to vegetable production during the war. And I think more people, even people in flats, could grow some vegetables to help out. It wouldn't be much, but it would help a bit.
I mean, it would be, you're talking about a national collective effort, which during, of course, the time that you're talking about was a collective effort reflective of the war in which the country found itself caught up. I mean, there is an argument that the situation is, the stakes are now so high that you should do something like that again.
Yeah, Ministry of Food would be a good idea. A Ministry for water, it could be a good idea, with all water being taken back into government running, being funded and run by the government. And people that waste water, like these companies I've been hearing about, should be charged with the cost of building new reservoirs or putting in desalination plants. That could quite easily be arranged. And, rationing when I was a child went on till I was 10. And some children, we weren't importing fruit and vegetables from abroad. And some children had never even seen a banana. They didn't know what to do with a banana at the end of the war. Some of them thought that you could eat it with the skin on. But I think food and water are critical, and that farmers should be given every assistance.
And Pauline, what do you think about the idea about creating a national food reserve? I see that there's a charity called the Food Foundation that has sent a letter to number 10 Downing Street saying the next food shock is not a question of if, but when. To meet it prepared, food has to stop being an afterthought for the government. Yeah,
I think that's a good idea. And also, during the war, if you'll remember, people had their food rationed, and you had to be registered with a certain shop or a certain butcher's. You couldn't just stroll into any old shop, and you were limited in what you could buy. And that could be a temporary measure.
And that rationing went on long after the war as well, Pauline, as you will know. I remember when my parents passed away and I was cleaning out the loft at the house, I discovered my father's ration book from, I think it was 1953. So, I mean, it might have been 1951. It certainly went on for a while after the war ended. Pauline, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's go very quickly to Matthew in Peterborough. Matthew, I haven't got long, but I wanted to hear what you had to say. Good evening.
Hi, I'll try and make it as quick as possible for you. So, with the data centres thing, data centres use at less than 0.1% of global water demand compared to power production, compared to agriculture, compared to domestic use. In fact, when it comes to the amount of storage that a cloud provider can provide compared to doing it locally on the power usage, they're way more efficient. So it actually uses less water compared to if we was all to go do it at home ourselves.
OK, so data centres you think get a bad rap. Carry on.
Yeah, but I do like the idea of desalination plants anyway, because anything helps. Every little helps. We've all heard that before from somewhere. When it comes to the food problem, I think part of the problem that we've actually got as a country is the politicians. Because as a country, we're very reactionary to a problem. We're not preventative to problems. We don't, even though we've been talking about the climate crisis since I was in primary school, greenhouse gases, all the greenhouse effect, all that sort of stuff, we haven't really been proactive in preparing for it. And now look, the world's on fire, right? Let's just start there.
Yeah.
We should have been doing countermeasures already. We should have been having water silos being built for farmland already, but when droughts do hit, so we can protect the crops. We export about 15 to 20% of our total food production anyway abroad. Like, we could be doing better farming, so that way we don't have to export as much. We can protect food locally alongside with the storage of food. I don't know what your thoughts are on there, because I can see it's now 9 o'clock.
I think, Matthew, you've done it brilliantly. You've brought me in on time. I think that you are absolutely right in suggesting that we needed to be having a national conversation about this a long time ago. And I'm very glad that we've spent the last hour talking about it, because this issue is a sleeper issue. It's creeping up on us. It is not going to go away, and we need to make sure that this isn't the only evening here on LBC that we talk about it. Into our final hour, we're going to talk about something else this evening, redemption, and whether you or anyone in your immediate vicinity have ever sought it. We're having the conversation in light of the fact that a former neo-Nazi activist with convictions for assaulting a police officer and harassing a Jewish member of parliament has been selected as a Conservative candidate seeking a seat on Somerset Council.
You need to be proud to be white, and that's what the National British Resistance is all about.
That is Joshua Bonehill-Payne speaking in 2014. Now he says he's a reformed man. His era as an anti-Semite, fascist and supporter of white rights, he says, is at an end. During more than 3 years in jail, he gave his life a rethink. Does he deserve a second chance? Who should get one and who should not?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, the Justice Secretary's apologised to the family of PC Andrew Harper after 2 of his killers were left eligible for early release.
We would have liked to have gone further, but we couldn't, because if we do that, we would run out of prison places very quickly, and then no victims would be getting justice, because their perpetrators wouldn't be being detained, they wouldn't be being incarcerated. That can't be right.
Alex Norris says rape, serious child sex offences and grooming are being excluded from the scheme, but manslaughter isn't. PC Harper died in 2019 after being caught behind a getaway car. His widow's called the decision not to exclude her husband's killers disgusting. Qatar says mediators are making progress towards ending the war between the United States and Iran, sending oil prices sharply lower. But Tehran insists they've only been speaking to Oman about shipping lanes. The Strait of Hormuz, normally the route for about a fifth of the world's oil, remains virtually shut, and another ship's been attacked trying to cross it. Senior FIFA staff have been asked to attend a crisis meeting with the under-pressure President Gianni Infantino in Morocco tomorrow. The meeting comes as member organisations withdraw support of Infantino following his failed plan to sell stakes in the World Cup. 95% of women under 50 who go on to develop breast cancer within a decade are reportedly being missed. Charities say the criteria used by GPs doesn't look enough at lifestyle. Dr. Juliet Usher-Smith led the study at Cambridge University and has told LBC about the tool they used to assess the risks.
It's a model that includes family history, but it also includes reproductive risk factors, say whether women have had children and what age they had those children, but also their exposure to hormones over time, so HRT or contraceptive use, but also their lifestyle. So we know that weight makes a difference, alcohol, physical activity.
And police say several athletes who competed at the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow are unaccounted for as competitors start heading home. Ugandan Sports News website says 4 of the country's boxing team are among those missing. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed up 21 points at 10,879. The pound buys $1.34 and €1.16. LBC weather, scattered showers in the north and west tonight, dry and partly cloudy in the southeast, a low of 12 degrees. Tomorrow there will be heavy thundery rain in the north, cloudier with patchy drizzle for Wales and the Midlands, but sunnier in the south and highs of 26 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Katie Dartford.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Simon Marks.
And I am in for Ian Dale all this week here on LBC and next week as well. It's great to be here. We're going to talk this hour. We're going to do a complete change in the conversation this hour. We're going to talk about redemption. Who gets a second chance? And your stories of turning your life around, or people in your family who went through a similar process. We thought we'd talk about this tonight because of the case of Joshua Bonehill Payne, who was recently selected as a candidate seeking a seat on Somerset Council for the Conservatives next year. You may not know the name, but you may well have seen some of the very funny AI videos that he has created at the Crewkerne Gazette. It's a satirical social media outlet that only today put out a video depicting Nigel Farage as Captain Mannering from Dad's Army, leading his men over the White Cliffs of Dover as he threatens a crackdown on small boats crossing the Channel. But Mr. Bonehill Payne's life has not always been a laughing matter.
People are too afraid to speak out about our race. And now listen, we're all white people, okay? There's this stereotype, there's this guilty complex about being white in Britain. You need to be proud to be white, and that's what the National British Resistance is all about.
That was Joshua Bonehill Payne in 2014, campaigning for the British National Party. He described himself as a nationalist, fascist and supporter of white rights, and he went on to engage in acts of violence and anti-Semitism that resulted in him being jailed. He was convicted of assaulting a police officer, burglary of a police station, of malicious communications over an anti-Islam hoax that led to death threats against the owners of a pub, and also of harassing Luciana Berger, a Jewish member of Parliament representing Liverpool Wavertree from 2010 to 2019. She is now a member of the House of Lords. But Mr. Bonehill Payne says in prison he turned his life around, realised the error of his ways and found a path to a different life.
When I first went into jail, I very much had the same ideologies, the same beliefs, and I showed no sign or interest of changing them at all. But at a certain point, I came to the realization that my life was going to be one of two directions. Either I continued with the anti-Semitism and the awful ideology that I had, and I spent the rest of my life in and out of jail, or I change and I do something about it to address the problems, to address the mistakes, to address the criminality.
And so, fast forward to today. He's won a cult following for the Crewkerne Gazette, producing those AI-created videos. He has Home Office counter-extremism certifications and has spoken at events alongside members of Parliament where he has discussed his past and highlighted the growing anti-Semitism faced by the Jewish community. He says the Conservative Party is fully aware of his past and fully supportive of his efforts next year to win win a council seat. But Luciana Berger today said she doesn't believe a word of it. She accused him of racial harassment via 5 separate blogs, of publishing what she called reams of deeply racist, misogynistic and pornographic material about her, and she called his trial 2 days of hell. For the avoidance of any doubt, she wrote today, I don't believe this man should have any role in public life because of both his racism and his view of women. So the question this hour is, who deserves a second chance and who doesn't? How do we decide when to believe that someone has genuinely changed their views? I'm not sure I'm entirely convinced by Mr. Bonehill Payne's claims. I don't know him. I've never followed his story until the last couple of days. Who knows what more we might learn between now and his election campaign next year? At the very least, he looks to me like he could be a bit of a hostage to fortune for Kemi Badenoch and the Conservatives. But how do we all decide within our own communities, within our own families, within our businesses perhaps, when redemption is warranted, when you give someone a second chance? Did you ever need one? And were you able to persuade your loved ones, your business partners, your employees or your employer that you were worthy of a second chance? Tell me your story of seeking society's re-evaluation, of trying to persuade people that you were not the person that many people had concluded that you might be, and whether you truly deserved that second chance and what that experience has been like for you. You can call us at 0345 6060 973. You can use that number for WhatsApp as well as for the telephones, and you can text 84850. Let's kick off the conversation by talking to Dave, who's called the programme from Manchester. Dave, good evening to you. How are you tonight?
Hi, Simon. I'm fine. I'm a bit nervous. I'm not used to phoning the radio.
No need to be nervous. It's just you and me, Dave. It's just the two of us.
Cheers, Simon. I came across Joshua Bonehill Payne towards the beginning of his harassment of people, and I became part of a group that helped collate evidence of what he was doing online, especially for those who weren't as tech savvy as me. There were some absolutely awful things. I've just sent you a post on Blue Sky of some of the violent fantasies that he had at the time. Then he went to jail. I've just found a tweet that he sent when I was still on Twitter before it became X, 23rd of May 2018, when he got out of jail. And I said, Joshua Bonehill Payne has been released on licence after spending almost 3 years in prison. Do not try to seek him out or otherwise harass him. Like everyone, he has a chance to rehabilitate. Do be aware of the strict conditions placed on him and be vigilant. So I was willing to give him a chance. And then he went quiet. And for a while, didn't hear anything. And I was made aware that he'd set up a new Facebook page. But it was all about his personal stuff, and he seemed to be settling down. His mum had reconciled with him after they'd had a long few years of not getting on. I do believe that she basically gave him a last chance when he got out of prison and took him back into her home. He'd been living alone before that for a long time and seemed to have gone down one of these rabbit holes of radicalisation. And then nothing really happened until I found out that he was responsible for the Crewkerne Gazette.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, it seemed like, he wasn't doing anything illegal. But I do wonder about what's happening in the last couple of days and the Conservatives vetting, because some of the violent fantasies I saw back in the day were quite terrifying.
Well, I don't want to get into the details of that Dave, because Mr. Bonehill-Payne is not here to defend himself, and I'm not familiar with the details of that. But certainly in terms of his relationship with the Conservative Party, he told the Guardian newspaper that he'd been an executive member of the Yeovil branch of the Conservative Party, working as an events organiser. He said the branch and indeed party are fully aware of my past. Our chairman has been a vocal advocate and has supported me since I became a member of the party. I am very grateful for the support. As I said, we've heard from Luciana Berger this evening, who says that she doesn't buy this notion that he has changed. I mean, but what's your view more broadly about whether people can change? Have you seen it in other cases? And is it possible to imagine that indeed he has? I mean, he's got these Home Office anti-extremism certifications. So I'm assuming that's accurate information. Presumably, he went through courses in order to get that. I mean, change is possible, isn't it?
Oh, certainly. There's a leading researcher, Hope Not Hate, Matthew Collins, who was previously on the far right before he gave all up and decided to go the complete opposite way. There was even a drama made about his work, getting another neo-Nazi jailed for the threats to kill Labour MP Rosie Cooper. With Bonehill-Payne himself, I'm sort of on the fence. I can completely understand where Luciana Berger's coming from. But I know that Mr. Bonehill-Payne now has much more to lose than he did in the past. I know he's now got a partner and a young family, and he'd have to be utterly stupid to give that up by regressing to his previous behaviour.
Well, Dave, I'm really grateful to you for calling the programme and kicking the conversation off this hour. That was Dave in Manchester, who had some background on the particular individual that we were talking about as we got into this conversation. As I say, I don't want to dwell on his particular case. I'd like to broaden this conversation out and ask whether it's possible for people to change. Can a leopard change its spots? Can someone persuade you? Has anybody ever persuaded you that their behaviour has meaningfully changed, that they're not the person that they might have been 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago? There are, as Dave was suggesting, many examples in society that I think we can point to of people who successfully changed. And I'm very curious to know about your own experience with all of this. Anne has just texted in the programme to say, Simon, a leopard does not change his spots, so no, no, no. But do you think change is possible? Do you think redemption is possible for people? Call me at 0345 6060 973, same number for WhatsApp that it is for the phones. You can text 84850. It is 16 minutes past 9.
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m.
Andy Burnham under fire today over the government's decision to let killers out of prison early. But did they have any alternative? The Prime Minister, for what it's worth, isn't here to face the backlash. He's gone on holiday after just 2 weeks in the job. His opponents say he's bunking off work already. But don't our leaders deserve a break just as much as the rest of us?
Ben Kentish from 10 p.m. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Goldbank London, a safe and sound way to buy and sell gold.
Start your journey in gold today.
Visit goldbank.co.uk.
A message from TfL for drivers, motorcyclists and cyclists. Before you turn, look around. Is there someone crossing or waiting to cross at the junction? You now need to always let them cross before you turn. Follow the highway code to keep everyone safe. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The Big Arch just got bacon. More smokiness, more crispiness, more deliciousness. With juicy beef, cheddar cheese and the Big Arch sauce. Now topped with crispy bacon. The Big Arch just got bacon.
Until 28th of September 2026. Served from 11 a.m. Subject to availability.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group Clinics. With over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling. A red light becomes a moment to breathe. A coffee run, a kick of momentum. A wrong turn turns into an adventure, while a song becomes your soundtrack. From the driver's seat of an LBX, even the most ordinary of days can feel that little bit extra. The award-winning Lexus LBX self-charging hybrid. Find the extraordinary in the everyday.
Simon Marks on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
And there's another element to this conversation that you can call me about as well, and it relates to whether you think you have a right to know about the criminal records of someone who is seeking your vote. Voters were denied the right to know whether any ministers in government declared past criminal convictions. Earlier this week, a transparency tribunal upheld attempts by Whitehall to keep its vetting processes secret. And all of this relates in part to the case of Louise Haigh, who, of course, stepped down as Transport Secretary in Sir Keir Starmer's government after it emerged that she had failed to publicly disclose a fraud conviction. She's, of course, now back in government as Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster under Andy Burnham. But while she was Transport Secretary for quite a long while, members of the public had absolutely no idea that she had a fraud conviction in her background. Do you think that people that are running for public office should be required to reveal all the skeletons in their closet, including skeletons of a criminal nature, if they want to serve in Parliament, if they want to sit on a council, as we were talking about the case of Joshua Bonehill-Payne in Somerset, who's running for a council seat there for the Conservative Party. Do you want to know if people that are running for office and seeking your vote have a past that includes criminal convictions? Because currently, as a result of that tribunal's ruling, you are now denied to know whether government ministers declared past criminal convictions. Call me and let me know what you think about that at 0345 6060 973. Let's talk to Grace in Ealing. Good evening, Grace. How are you tonight?
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
I am all right, thank you very much. What's your view on redemption, forgiveness, whether people deserve a second chance, and how you can, as Ronald Reagan would have put it, trust but verify?
So many things. I think that, in a way, none of us deserve redemption, and yet we are offered it, and it is such an important thing. I should start out by saying, actually, that there is clearly a rise of neo-Nazism and white supremacism in our society at the moment, and it is disturbing to see. I'm a white person myself, so I'm not personally threatened, but I'm very angry to see people with these views increasingly becoming more prominent. Having said that, though, I do think that change and redemption is possible. I noted, looking this guy up, that one of the things he said outrageously to Luciana Berger was that Jewish people are responsible for the death of Jesus, which is theologically inaccurate, but also Jesus has really influenced the values that we have here in the Western world because of the remarkable things he did that led to his teaching spreading, and he did say that we can be redeemed and we can turn our lives around, and we're offered forgiveness, even though we don't really deserve it. At the same time, repentance is a really important part of that. And we've sometimes seen politicians, you will have seen this particularly across the pond, certain politicians kind of putting on a facade of Christianity to try and appear righteous when they're clearly not actually trying to be repentant and to turn away from negative things. So sometimes people can misuse the concept, perhaps, for their own gain.
Yeah, and some of them, Grace, in this election cycle in the United States aren't even repenting. They're trying absolutely to hold the line, stay on the ballot, even as, and this has included particularly one Democrat in the state of Maine, even as really extraordinary, shocking allegations about what could potentially be criminal activity stack up against them. But how do you know when repentance is genuine?
That's a difficult thing for us to do as outsiders. I think that a person's actions, to some extent, are going to reflect what's going on in their heart and mind. I mean, when I started trying to find out about Donald Trump many years ago when he came on the political scene, because I hadn't known about him prior to that in his real estate work, I was kind of thinking, he's trying to suck up to Christians. Is he actually in any way Christian? And I could quickly see from his rhetoric that he's not, that it's all just a pretense, because his words and his actions don't reflect that in his heart and mind he's trying to, do the right thing or be decent. But then sometimes people really do change their way of seeing the world. I mean, obviously in the Bible we've got Paul, who is killing Christians, and then he completely changes his mind, having had an encounter with Jesus, and he goes on to be the most significant Christian in history. So sometimes people really change, and there have been so many people who have had difficult experiences, particularly if they've maybe grown up surrounded by a lot of tumult, and yet they then change their minds and they do really important inspirational things. And it seems like this particular guy at the moment, in addition to making funny AI videos, is I think trying to help a little bit with counter-extremism, and sometimes people who have some experience or insight into these evil movements can be really helpful in countering them going forward. So I think the redemption is possible, and we all to some extent need it because we all make mistakes. But you're right to ask the question how we can tell from the outside, because I think it's hard for us to gauge.
Very, very difficult. I mean, it's the trust but verify thing, and it is very, very difficult in some cases to engage in that. Grace, thanks very much indeed for calling in tonight. That's Grace in Ealing. Let's stay in London and go to Haringey, and Steve is there tonight. Evening, Steve.
Hi, Simon. Nice to talk to you.
And to you as well.
Well, yes, people can change. I went to a talk in a church by a guy who openly regretted that he'd murdered someone in the past, and he found Christianity while he was in prison. He was very sincere. He really regretted it. He was not looking forward to having to tell his son one day what he'd done. And, there's plenty of other cases where people have changed. I went to an event to see a film by a former religious extremist, an Islamist extremist, who really regretted that, questioned everything, made films countering it, and really put his neck on the line, countering all the nonsense that comes out. So people can very definitely change. Can I pick up on one thing?
Absolutely.
That your previous caller mentioned. Someone said that people were blaming Jewish people for the death of Jesus. And biblically, that's just so wrong. He said, love your enemies, pray for your enemies. If you don't forgive people, they won't forgive you. And he did what he said while they were actually doing it to him, and it was the Romans, by the way. He openly said, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they do. So if he can forgive them, how on earth can other people claim to be Christians and go around not forgiving them?
And Steve, can I ask you about the other question that I was asking this hour, which is about government ministers and people running for public office. Do you think that voters should have an automatic right to know if those people running for offices have been criminally convicted in the past? Do you think that should be just basic published knowledge that's put out there?
I think that's a very fair argument. And, I'm not going to argue against that. People, another thing, if people are going to bandy Christianity around, I've read that book, I studied that book, and I publish articles on it, and I know that it says, it has Jesus saying, if you judge other people, God will judge you. So, be careful judging other people.
But Steve, just to push you on that, though, I mean, if you are coming up face to face with someone who used to be a neo-Nazi, in the case that we were talking about at the start of the hour, and who claims that they've repented and claims that they've changed their life. I mean, you do have to judge them, don't you? I mean, you have to reach a conclusion about whether you believe them or not.
True. Now, what I want to know is, and I haven't heard it yet, is what the Jewish community says about his repentance.
Well, I'm not sure that there is a single answer to that question, but certainly I can tell you that Luciana Berger, Jewish Member of Parliament, who successfully accused him of harassing her, is absolutely saying this evening that for any avoidance of doubt, I don't believe this man should have any role in public life because of both his racism and his view of women. So she certainly is not buying the argument that he has repented.
Yes, these are the voices that I want to hear. Because if anyone's going to know, if anyone's really going to understand these issues, it'll be the Jewish press.
OK, I'm not quite sure what you mean by the Jewish press, Steve, but thanks for calling in, and let's see what other people have to say about this notion of whether you can repent successfully and turn your life around and persuade other people that you have done that. If there are members of your family, if there are people in your immediate vicinity who have tried to persuade you that they are not the person that they used to be, what has that experience been like for you? You can call me at 0345 6060 973. Do you think that as members of the voting public, you should automatically be told when a serving government minister has a criminal record? That was not the case in the case of Louise Haigh, then the Transport Secretary, who had to step down after it emerged that she had failed publicly to disclose a fraud conviction. Do you think that automatically voters should have the right to know? Call me on that or text me at 84850. Coming up after the news headlines, a group of scientists, writers and artists have written a letter to the government calling ministers foolish for cutting the funding to Jodrell Bank. That's the site in Cheshire of an absolutely enormous telescope. Used to be an iconic location for British science and technology. Andy Burnham's government has abolished the old Department of Science, is merging its responsibilities into another ministry. One of the people who signed this letter protesting the budget cuts and the possible closure of Jodrell Bank is the Astronomer Royal for Scotland, and will be joining me next. But now, with the time at 9:30, this hour's news headlines come from Katie Dartford.
The Justice Secretary says victims' families are carrying the can for the failure of previous governments to build enough prison places. Ministers have apologised to the family of PC Andrew Harper, as two of his killers still remain eligible for early release. It's understood senior FIFA staff have been asked to come to Morocco tomorrow for talks with its under-fire president. Jordan's Football Association has joined England and Wales in calling for Gianni Infantino to go. And part of a SpaceX rocket is expected to crash into the moon tomorrow morning. The Falcon 9 was launched 19 months ago before unintentionally veering towards the moon. LBC weather: scattered showers in the north and west tonight, drier and partly cloudy in the south and east, a low of 12 degrees.
This is LBC.
Imagine you in a nice comfy seat, with your hands behind your head, taking in the views, instead of taking on the road, maybe even taking a nap. That's the bliss of getting where you need to go without worrying about driving. Book your train journey via avantiwestcoast.co.uk and we'll take you there. Avanti West Coast. Feel good travel.
Leading Britain's conversation, LBC, with Simon Marks.
Taking your calls this hour about second chances. Have you ever given anybody a second chance? And if you did, are you glad that you did? Did it pay off? If someone tells you that they've changed their life, if they tell you that they're not the person that you believed them to be, have you ever regretted accepting their request for a second chance, or have you ever concluded that you made a mistake by giving them a second chance? Call me at 0345 6060 973. Same number for WhatsApp that it is for the phones. You can also text 84850, and we're going to come back to your calls and messages on that in a moment. But first, I do not think we have talked enough about Jodrell Bank. The government is now coming under pressure to save the historic British Observatory after funding for its extraordinary array of radio telescopes was dramatically cut to the point where it appears now to be facing closure. Scientists and a growing array of prominent figures say that it is a blow not only to British astronomy, but also to the country's support for science more broadly. And LBC's Ben Kentish, who's going to be here in just half an hour, noted on social media last week that the £2.8 million in cuts that Jodrell Bank is facing pale into insignificance against the £7.2 million that Parliament has earmarked to spend on bespoke stationery, fancy letterhead, fancy envelopes for members of Parliament. If we can support their own headed notepaper, their embossed envelopes, how is it possible that we do not have a way of keeping Jodrell Bank up and running? Let's talk tonight to Professor Catherine Haymans, the Astronomer Royal for Scotland, who has signed this letter calling upon the government to save Jodrell Bank. Professor Haymans, thanks very much indeed for being with us here on LBC this evening. This is a subject I really wanted to cover because I feel like all my life Jodrell Bank has been this kind of iconic image. I mean, growing up as a kid in the 1970s, I mean, can you just explain what's Jodrell Bank done for all of us lately? Good evening.
Good evening. So I mean, people in the north know Jodrell Bank. You know, you go past it on the train, on the motorway. This gorgeous giant dish, and it's not just this large Lovell telescope at Jodrell Bank as well. It works in tandem with 6 other radio telescopes across the UK, and these radio telescopes, they work together to listen to the radio that's being sent out across the universe. And this comes from all different wonderful sources across the universe. Let's talk black holes. Everyone loves talking about black holes, Simon. You know, this array can watch the explosive events that happen when a star falls into a black hole. It can ask big questions like, how do planets form? You know, it can watch these dead disks of sort of gas around forming new planets around stars. It has this amazing crystal clear vision of the universe through radio light, and it has done spectacular science for over 70 years, Simon. And I think, you know, people often think, oh, you know, that's really old. It must be time to upgrade. But that's not the case. I mean, it has been upgrading all the time, getting better and better, advancing technology, advancing engineering. And it's got to the point now, Simon, this is really exciting, new science that it's doing, that it is monitoring debris in space, sort of debris around planet Earth. It can map the debris down to sort of like tens of centimetres as it tumbles around in the orbit around space. And, you know, this is an amazing, unique capability that we have right here in the UK. And, you know, we're thinking about the UK space sector, how this is booming at the moment. How much does the UK sector bring in? I mean, it's billions of pounds of income each year. And we have this amazing radio facility that doesn't, you know, this is huge. This capability to do both spectacular science and monitor what's happening in space, and we're considering shutting it down for absolute peanuts in the grand scheme of things.
So I mean, we'd be mad to close it.
I think so. I mean, there are so many reasons. I've talked about the science, I've talked about the space sector. Let's also talk about just inspiration. I mean, you've seen the outpouring of love for this observatory that has come from young and old musicians, artists. It inspires so many people because it's huge. Have you seen it, Simon?
I've never been to see it. You can tour it, can't you?
You can, yeah, there's a wonderful visitor centre there, and you can go there. And I think what's really special for the people who visit is that this isn't some monument to the past. This is doing spectacular science right there. You can sit and watch the disc and go, right, what's it looking at right now? What is it catching light from? Is it looking at a black hole? Is it looking at a galaxy far, far away in the universe? Is it trying to understand the mysterious dark matter and dark energy in our universe? What is it looking at today? And you can sit right there underneath it and just watch it. It's amazing. It's an absolutely wonderful facility.
So let me tell you what one of our listeners has just texted in. It's Matt, who says, I went to Jodrell Bank on a field trip in high school, ended up reading physics at university, never forgot their learning centre and museum, and their tin of beans weighted as they would weigh on other planets. I mean, so that makes the point, right? This is inspirational and sort of foundational in some ways for British science.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I think, the other thing is Jodrell Bank is the tip of the iceberg for this cut. So it's the one that we're most passionate about here in the UK because it's right here on British soil. But this is just one of many different cuts that are happening across UK astronomy projects and particle physics projects. There are cuts to projects at CERN in Switzerland, which Brian Cox has been talking a lot about. We're pulling out of a telescope in Hawaii that allows us to take images of black holes right at the centre of our galaxy. We are pulling out from the future next generation projects at the extremely large telescope in Chile. This thing is the size of a football stadium, Simon. I mean, the UK we're really world leading in astronomy. And I know a lot of people love to say we're world leading, but we really rock when it comes to doing astronomy and space science. The UK is really good at it. And the money that the UK government is trying to save at the moment in this area is tiny. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the UKRI budget. And none of us understand why these cuts are being made. We just don't have a straight answer on why these cuts are necessary when we're doing such brilliant work and transforming that technology to impact everyday life as well. It's not just us having a lovely time looking up in space and going, oh, isn't it marvellous, which it is. But the high-tech engineering that we develop to do this spectacular science does eventually end up helping you in your everyday life. Just look at your mobile phone, the way you're using Wi-Fi, the internet, that's all come from astronomy and particle physics in the past.
And are you concerned by what you've seen so far from this new government? I mean, this decision to fold the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology into the Business and Trade Department appears to have worried and indeed in some cases angered the scientific community who, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I've certainly heard others saying that they just don't feel they're hearing enough from this government to explain that decision-making process, and it's time for Andy Burnham to smile on UK science. Waning support for basic research threatens Britain's technology ambitions. What's your view on that?
Yeah, you had lots of questions in this, Simon. So I think, there is a very clear connection between funding fundamental science and that leading to growth and innovation in technology. If I look at the students and the early career researchers I've trained across my decades of working on dark matter, and I see where they are now. They are leaders in AI, they are leaders in defence and security, they are leaders in communications. They're very few of them are still working in astronomy, but that passion for astronomy, that passion to learn and develop their skills has meant that they've gone out and they are UK growth right now. So there is a clear link, and you really do. There is so much benefit for society for supporting this fundamental science. Now, your question was about the closure of the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology and merging that with the Department of Business. I'm going to sit on the fence on this one and see where it goes. I think there are pros and cons. Science used to be part of the Department of Business 4 or so years ago, before the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology was created, and we did actually all right in that sector. And I think there are definite links between science and business, and one can exploit that. I think it's all going to be in the implementation, and I'm really looking forward to talking to the new science minister. So with the Royal Astronomical Society, we've reached out to the new ministers and said, can we sit down and have a conversation? Let us explain to you what we do. You know, Jodrell Bank is such this iconic monument to UK innovation and science, and we desperately don't want it to become a hulking rust of metal, a sort of a sad graveyard to what it was. We want it to carry on doing brilliant things, as with all the other UK astronomy projects that have also been cut in this recent round of funding.
And I'm sorry, just as a practical question, if the funding ran out and it shut down, I mean, can you literally switch it off?
You can.
I mean, is that you can just unplug it?
You can just unplug it.
Well, what a shame that would be. While we've got you, can I ask you about another story in the news?
Yeah.
What do you know about this 4 tons of SpaceX debris, Elon Musk's detritus, that is going to crash into the moon tomorrow morning? What's that all about?
Morning, 7:34. Is it 7:43? Let me just flip the exact number. 7:34 tomorrow morning UK time. Yeah, I don't know whether to be really, really cross or really excited about this story. And I think it's okay, actually, to feel both. So excited because we get to learn a lot of science about the moon when something crashes into it, because we can watch the plume of ejecta that comes out. So the Very Large Telescope in Chile is going to be monitoring this, so we can learn about the lunar surface, the geophysics of the moon, lots of exciting science that can be done. The cross part of me, though, is like, well, really? Are we littering the moon accidentally? You know, this is space, just one of over, you know, there's millions of pieces of space debris up there, and it is only getting worse because there is no legislation in space about what we can put up there.
So this is not an experiment by Elon Musk. This is space debris that is just on a trajectory to crash into the moon.
Yeah.
And there's no international regulation that prevents any of that stuff. Any of these private companies that are playing around with space exploration can just basically find themselves in a situation where they chuck a whole load of debris at the moon, and that's there's no consequences for that.
It's shocking, isn't it? You know, if you pollute a river here on Earth, or if you want to make a building, you have to apply for planning permission. There are lots of regulations here on Earth, and we just don't have that in space. So there's the Outer Space Treaty from 1967, and that Outer Space Treaty is an international treaty that effectively says you cannot claim part of space. So you can't go to the moon and say, this is British. But there are no regulations about what you put up there. So you have to be very safe with your rocket launches. You have to apply for the ability to launch things into space. But once it's up there, you can do whatever you like with it. And there's no way to deal with all this debris once it's up there. And the more and more that we put up there, the bigger this problem becomes of space debris. And so, I mean, this is an absolutely massive piece. This rocket's 15 metres long, 4 metres in diameter. It's currently heading towards the moon at a speed of 5,400 miles per hour that it's going to impact. And, you know, it's I'm back to my excited person, Simon, because, you know, this plume that is going to be emitted, 1 million kilograms of debris is going to rise up off the surface, go 20 kilometres above the surface. Lots of science to learn, but yeah.
This time tomorrow, are we going to know what we're seeing up there? I mean, are we going to, or is it going to take longer than that?
So they're going to be, so we don't know for sure exactly what's going to happen because we don't understand the moon perfectly. So our predictions have been made.
That in and of itself is terrifying.
Come on, the moon's a long way away. So if our predictions are right, then that's great. That means we really understand the lunar surface and we understand how things work. So we've got a bunch of different professional telescopes that are going to be looking at it. The NASA Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter that goes around the moon has taken images of the crater site before and will take images after. We think the impact crater is going to be between 20 to 30 metres across. And so there'll be lots of data analysis that happens afterwards, but I don't think anyone's going to be able to, certainly not with your naked eye. If you've got a decent telescope and you live in the Americas, for us in the UK it's going to be far too bright, but in the Americas when it's nighttime, maybe you'll see something, but probably not. This is probably one for the really big telescopes.
Well, listen, thank you so much for your time, Professor Catherine Haymans. You've been brilliant, and your infectious enthusiasm for Jodrell Bank, I hope, is going to be conveyed to the government when you get a chance to sit down and have those conversations. That was Professor Catherine Haymans, the Astronomer Royal for Scotland, one of the many signatories to a letter calling on the government to save Jodrell Bank. And some of you are calling in about Jodrell Bank. And if you're so moved, you can join that discussion as well, because I'd like to hear from you if you visited Jodrell Bank, if you feel strongly that something should be done to save it, or if you think we should be doing away with it. You can call me at 0345 6060 973, or you can call and we can continue the earlier conversation we were having about whether we should be giving people second chances. Can you do a do-over in your life when something's gone wrong and you want to correct it? You can text 84850 as well. The time on LBC, 12 minutes to 10.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Ben Kentish.
Andy Burnham under fire over the prison's early release scheme. What's it like being the victim of a crime and not getting justice? The Prime Minister's also getting stick for going on holiday. That's not fair, is it?
Ben Kentish at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no, just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
Get unlimited video calls with vets from First Vet with Pets in a Pickle. For pet insurance policies as unique as they are, visit petsinappickle.co.uk.
Chase gives you 2% cash back on your everyday spending.
Every day? Like Monday's train to work?
Yes.
Tuesday's big shop?
Yes again.
Wednesday's coffee treat?
Yes, cash back.
Thursday's lunch, Friday's brunch and Saturday's takeaway?
Yep, and yep.
Super.
Oh, nothing on Sundays.
I take it easy.
Lovely. Enjoy 2% cash back on debit or credit card spending on groceries, restaurants, everyday transport and fuel. Search Chase Bank. 18 plus UK residents. Chase current and saver accounts required. Maximum £20 per month. Eligibility, qualification, exceptions and T's and C's apply.
Deirdre, look. It's the Bottomleys this time, sliding across their car bonnet.
Leave them be, Philip. They're just claim confident.
Claim confident?
Yes. By doing their own car finance compensation claim, using the FCA's free tools to help, they'll keep 100% of what they're owed. I've just done ours too. Come on!
Deirdre? Deirdre? Come back here.
Start yours today with help from the Financial Conduct Authority. Search Claim Confident.
Octopus Energy. Great value and outstanding customer service. Recommended by which? A record 9 years running.
This is LBC with Simon Marks.
A lot of you texting in about Jodrell Bank. Thomas has texted in to say the government like to push STEM but want to cut funding off for science. It doesn't make any sense. Let's go to Paul, who is a first-time caller to LBC from Stoke. Paul, good evening to you.
Simon, well, I've been ringing LBC many years since 2010, so just on this particular evening show, I think it's possible.
Well, it's lovely to have you at this time of night, Paul.
Simon, yeah, it's the first time on yourself. Yeah, great stuff. Yeah, regarding Jodrell Bank, I think we should really save it because it's so important because in future times and the amount it's sort of explore new planets, I think we should save the place. I think they shouldn't close it down. I think they should save it.
I mean, for the cost, I mean, the cost seems marginal. I mean, I've got one listener that's texted in saying they spend more money on the bars and restaurants in the Houses of Parliament than they do on Jodrell Bank. And as I was saying, Ben had put out on his social media feed last week that they spend, I think, almost 3 times the amount on letterhead for members of Parliament and embossed envelopes than they do on Jodrell Bank, which, I mean, it's a bargain, isn't it?
It is important, yeah. It's important to Space Centre. It's a really important. I visited it myself many years ago, and it's a great place to visit. It's so fascinating. The space is so fascinating.
I have not visited, Paul, which is something I need to correct, especially if there's the threat of shutting it down. But when you do go and visit, what do you see?
Well, of course, you see all the space, the operators. It's a long time since last visit, but as far as it's a great place to visit, and I recommend the place. I reckon it's so fascinating.
Fantastic. I'll tell you what, I'm going to take you up on that recommendation. Paul, thanks very much indeed for calling LBC, not for the first time, but for the first time at this time of the day. Let's talk to Richard in Battersea. Evening, Richard.
Hello, mate. Yes, this sounds to be an absolutely potty idea. If I could just inform everybody, I hope I'm not misremembering all this, but I think originally Jodrell Bank was actually run by the University of Manchester Institute of Science and Technology, which is that huge building next to the Gay Quarter in the centre of Manchester. It does seem rather bizarre that Andy Burnham, who's Mr. Manchester, is about to close down something which is the biggest physical representation of Manchester technology that's ever been produced.
Well, I was wondering about that. I was wondering if the location might help it or hinder it. It's hard to know.
Well, I think the main problem is people don't realise that Jodrell Bank is literally only just over the border into Cheshire. It's only about probably 15 miles from the centre of Manchester. If you come up the A34 using the A roads, you can actually see it driving from Birmingham to Manchester. And I mean, it does seem to be an amazing piece of physical architecture, apart from all its uses, to actually have as an object. It's a bit like Cape Canaveral, you know what I mean?
Well, one of our listeners has gone even further. Bruce has texted the programme to say Jodrell Bank is a latter-day Sistine Chapel.
That is a very good way of putting it also. I think, quite honestly, Mr. Manchester is probably surrounded by too many geeks and hasn't got his feet on the ground. I mean, I don't know what the actual cost is in pound notes, but it does seem pretty obvious that it's fantastic value for money, and they'd be better off closing down about 6 of the Westminster Bells, wouldn't they?
I mean, are you surprised, Richard, that we've not heard more from Andy Burnham and other ministers in his government about science, about innovation, about technology, and about a sector of the British economy in which this country, as Jodrell Bank symbolises, has really been a leader?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, this coincidental closure of the Department for Science and Technology, was it?
Well, it's not closing, it's being merged. Did you say merger or closure?
Well, I mean, quite often people will see merger as closure. It all depends who's running it, doesn't it?
Well, it depends, doesn't it, exactly on the setup. I mean, the Financial Times in its opinion piece says today the new Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, must make sure science and technology are not swamped within the larger department. And the FT also argues, with regard to Jodrell Bank, it's hard to see companies funding telescopes whose raison d'etre is to investigate outer space. I mean, we've just heard from the Royal Astronomer of Scotland about Elon Musk dumping debris tonight on the moon. I mean, that gives you a sense of what private companies are willing to do in terms of space exploration.
Absolutely. I mean, you could use it all sorts of ways. You could actually establish a kind of centre of technology at Jodrell Bank site, you know, and even to the extent of building data centres there or whatever. But for sure, it is a fantastic asset, which is worth 100 times what the costs involved are.
£2.8 million of funding has been withdrawn from UK Research and Innovation, which is the agency that funds Jodrell Bank. I mean, £2.8 million. I mean, we've got to be able to find that down the side of a sofa, haven't we?
Absolutely. It's roughly what is the fare of Badens on London Underground for about 2 weeks, something like that, isn't it?
Is that right?
I just invented that, but you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about, yeah. They've been cracking down, by the way. I've seen quite a lot of cracking down on fare dodging on the London Underground over the last few weeks. Tell me, have you visited Jodrell Bank?
Strangely enough, I was actually a student at the University of Manchester Institute, and I never actually went. Is that unforgivable?
I think it is. I think you've got to make the trip. I've never been, and I have to say, as I was saying to Professor Siemens, it's been such an iconic image. I mean, I remember having textbooks at school that had photographs of Jodrell Bank on the front cover. I mean, it was a big, big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think your correspondent earlier, you mentioned something about linking it up with other satellite and tracking locations. That is how you create monstrous telescopes, by actually having a number of them scattered around, but linking them all up together. So it isn't actually just the size of Jodrell Bank, it's the basis of a whole network of observation, isn't it?
Now, you said it was 2.8 million quid would be the amount of money that the fare dodging on the London Underground.
Yes.
So we've done some research. My esteemed colleague Chris has been having a look, and he says you're wrong. Fare dodging on the London Underground and Elizabeth Line is worth £3.17 million for just 1 week.
I can believe that.
So you were barking up the right tree, but underestimating it, Richard. Thanks very much indeed for calling in. That's Richard in South London, joining our conversation about Jodrell Bank. And I feel moved by it. And I know Ben Kentish, sitting opposite me right now, feels moved by it, because, as I say, he pointed out on X last week that you could take all the money they spend on embossed letterhead, right?
7.2 million, I think it was.
Crazy.
And Jodrell Bank needs less than 3.
2.8, yeah.
This is just stamps and personalised stationery for MPs. So if you halved that budget and reallocated it, you could keep Jodrell Bank open.
And someone on text was saying they spend twice as much as you spend on Jodrell Bank on the bars and restaurants at the Palace of Westminster.
For a government spending, it's pennies. It's crazy.
That's it from me. He's about to take over. I'll be back at 7 o'clock tomorrow night, sitting in for Ian again. You can catch up with the show, as you know exactly where to find the catch-up and all of that kind of stuff. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's Richard Spur. But as you know now, it's Ben Kentish.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. Lovely to be with you tonight. Hello, welcome to Late Nights with Ben Kentish here on LBC. Tonight,
by kicking the teeth just shows that the families and the victims don't get a say in any of this. And it just shows you that they don't care.
Victims' families hit out today at the government's decision to release killers and domestic abusers from prison after they've served just the third of their sentences. Among those now set to be eligible for early release, 2 of the killers of PC Andrew Harper, as well as a man who let her boyfriend kill her 2-year-old daughter, and somebody who assisted the fatal shooting of Ellie Edwards in a Merseyside pub, all of which has triggered fury and concern from victims.